Представляем вам улучшенное покрытие от Life. Мы расширили 4G-сеть по всей стране, чтобы связь в каждом регионе становилась только лучше. Смотрите на всех смартфонах страны. Присоединяйтесь к нам и узнавайте подробности на live.com.by.
Коллеги, я предлагаю начинать. Кто на регистрации там подтянется. У нас достаточно плотная программа. Организаторы попросили меня сделать маленькое объявление в начале, я потом еще по ходу напомню. У нас в программе ближе к концу заявлено выступление экспертов про ООН, и организаторы сказали, что выступление, презентация будет на английском. Поэтому, если вдруг этот язык чужд для вас, можно взять девайсы, которые там в ухо вам сурдоперевод сделают, чтобы не пропустить ничего интересного. Я потом, если тут не увлекусь и не забуду, еще напомню, но просто, чтобы это вдруг не превратилось в массовость, рекомендую технические или организационные вопросы решить чуть заранее. Вот. А в целом тогда предлагаю начать. Еще раз добрый день. Чтобы правильно спозиционировать наше мероприятие, так начну немножко с предыстории. У меня тут несколько слов в качестве приветственного слова есть. Несколько минут обозначу, что в прошлом году в рамках ТИБО мы в таком инициативном порядке выступили с предложением организаторов организовать и провести секцию по большому данному. Да, то есть у ТИБО повестка, она примерно там более-менее устаканилась одинаковая, появляются какие-то новые темы, что-то уходит, но в целом как бы про цифровую трансформацию экономики речь идет. Ну и мы предложили поговорить по большим данным, потому что, так, если в целом посмотреть, в стране проводится летом, буквально недавно, по-моему, март, апрель, была выставка Big Data на фоне, проводил ее БГУИР вместе с Академией наук. Не знаю, там знакомы вы с ней или нет. В этом году 10-я была, международная, вроде какое знаковое большое мероприятие. Но просто информации по ее итогам и по ее вообще проведению, честно говоря, мы даже как эксперты, работающие в этой отрасли, не всегда встречали. Ну и при этом мы видим и участвуем периодически в российских мероприятиях, где-то тема достаточно горячая, там может быть где-то на полшага ребята впереди. И там очень такие вопросы интересные обсуждаются. Ну и решили попробовать провести что-то здесь такое, аналогичного плана. И достаточно большой ажиотаж был в прошлом году. Вот в этом году организаторы сказали, что больше 200 человек зарегистрировалось. Не знаю, сколько мест в зале, но смотрю, что места потихоньку заполняются. О чем мы сегодня поговорим? Ну или, по крайней мере, из тех докладов, которые включили в повестку, хотим поговорить. То есть у нас в стране реализуется госпрограмма. Уже вот, она уже, наверное, середину, да, на этой пятилетке перешла, уже тут 1,5 года осталось, уже, наверное, можно потихоньку про завершение говорить. И за эти вот 4 года и за предыдущие госпрограммы построена очень большая IT-инфраструктура, множество информационных систем создано, которые уже, наверное, даже как сервисы стали повседневностью, многие из них в нашей жизни. Но мы, судя по задачам, по лейтмотиву, и вчера, когда на одном из мероприятий Минсвязи рассказывали про стратегию программы на следующий, или концепцию, или стратегию на следующие 5 лет, да, там акценты чуть смещены, но, опять же, мы, по крайней мере, я не услышал там вот про данные. Мы опять говорим про информационные системы, про их там дружбу между собой, про межведомственное взаимодействие, про какие-то глобальные процессы. А мы, как эксперты, работающие в этой отрасли, видим, что те введенные информационные системы, которые построены, они генерируют большие объемы данных. Эти данные отработали вот свою первичное назначение, там построена какая-то аналитика, там отчетность, там какие-то процессы отработали, и они таким большим слоем складываются где-то на жесткие диски, копятся, пока там кто-нибудь про них не вспомнит. И вот как раз-таки про вопросы, связанные с их, скорее, наверное, даже вторичным использованием, или повторным, или там еще как-то, вот хотелось бы сегодня и поговорить. Если говорить про наш опыт, то мы плотно общаемся и с заказчиками, и с другими разработчиками, и с эксплуатацией таких крупных систем и комплексов, и видим для себя как бы несколько моментов. ну, такие вопросов, наверное, или которые возникают, они, наверное, пока носят больше риторический характер, но тем не менее. Как я говорил, данные у многих накапливаются просто бессистемно. Вот они есть, они там пишутся, куда-то складируются и так далее. Что с ними делать, куда бежать, никто зачастую не задумывается. Мы на прошлом году на сессии, когда выступали, говорили про такой термин, концепцию, называется темные данные, да? То есть когда по оценкам экспертов, там, если Гартнер брать от 80%, если брать eadf, там, до 95% больших данных никогда не используются. То есть вот они отработали и легли легким слоем в архив. Почему это происходит? Ну, зачастую данные собираются без какой-либо стратегии. То есть вот они сыпятся сами себе и сыпятся. Хорошо, что все работает, отлично. Зачастую разные подразделения внутри даже одной компании, предприятия собирают данные, но даже не знают там о существовании друг друга. Одни и те же данные собирают. Еще веселее наблюдать, когда на одних и тех же, условно, на одних и тех же данных построена аналитика, и она не пляшет между собой, потому что показатель называется одинаково, а численные значения имеют разные. Ну а в некоторых крупных системах данных настолько много, что просто не хватает рук, чтобы вообще с ними хоть что-то делать. Ну, то есть такой человеческий немножко фактор. Поэтому эти вопросы, они есть, они будут. Как-то большинство из нас тут, по сути, как мы говорили, виновны в бессистемном накоплении данных. Мы встречаем в практике такие кейсы, даже весьма удивительные. Где-то я разговаривал с ритейлом в прошлом году.
Last year I spoke with a retailer and I said, you all run loyalty programs. Could you tell me how you reuse it? If someone buys a washing machine, you give him a discount. What do you do next? Do you forecast something, maybe some custom-made proposals that you push onto him, store itinerary maps, for example? And they told me something like, you know, we have terabytes of data accumulated over years. So we delete it after 2 years. I was quite dumbfounded by this reply, and then I don't know why they even come up with the loyalty programs if the data gets deleted 2 years later. Every year storage systems become cheaper and cheaper, and it gets less expensive to store the data, so no one is mindful of that. No one, perhaps is an overstatement, a lot of people don't think about the need to protect it. So while it's in archive, there's no issue, but if there is a leak, then there might be issues. And you might be facing a fine. So the issues are numerous, and we have the stuff to discuss. So it's not that bad. I got off to a bad start with this, let's say, but a lot of info system owners are aware of this, and they try to reuse and double dip the available data. But it's often the tech guys who see the data and want to use it again and again for a variety of tasks. But business does not provide tasks to be resolved with available data sets. So there is a gap here observable within companies. Sometimes we witness tech guys present their company's data and what could be done with that data, and the management is quite surprised. Really? We have this kind of data? So they're really impressed and overwhelmed with having this data. Bigger companies have learned how to use this data, and they try to consider selling options for the data. You know, who might be interested in the data, in what format, where should I go, should I circulate letters, and what the price is for one data set. It's hard to come by a reply to this one since there is no practice. So a big help could be some sort of a big platform like a dating app or matchmaking app, you know, to set up communication. A couple of years ago, our country promoted Open Data Portal. I wanted to check it out and visit that website, but this portal is out of service. To be fair, I must say that the Russian portal, similar portal, website does not work either. Perhaps it was popular back in the day to work in this fashion, but now there are new cooperative and collaborative arrangements in place. The use of public data, the state data, is quite diverse. Getting access to data, quality of that data. Unfortunately, last year we did a few projects with public access, and to tell you the truth, I never thought that people could come up with so many names for one thing, tomatoes. But to measure meters using bananas is quite odd as well. You could look at data quality from a different perspective. We are witnessing the nascent neural networks, and data is like letters for building systems. So you can imagine what we're going to teach it if we feed into it meters measured in bananas. So in the next 3 hours, I don't expect to be able to cover all the ground, but we will have presentations of different nature. We've invited the public sector in charge of different things. We've invited practitioners, developers, and standardization and methodology developers. I hope you'll enjoy it. I want to ask all the speakers to keep their presentation under 15 minutes. Okay, try to be practical and put less hype into your presentation. This will allow more time for the Q&A session at the end. So from my side, as a welcome remark, I have finished, so I want to give the floor to Ilya Mechin from the Operational and Analytical Center. Program. Good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you for inviting me. I find it hard to disagree that data per se have become an oil, petroleum, second petroleum. It helps you increase your capital. But we must state that along with positive developments, any uncontrollable, haphazard oversight of oil can lead to oil spills, and the same with data. Data could be stolen. compromised. Information that you have in one copy could be stolen. So today, colleagues, I will abuse my authority and add a couple of things to the topic of my presentation. It's important to discuss it amongst experts. The previous section was devoted to data protection, by the way, and it was amidst the people who are responsible for development. And those who view security experts with a little bit of caution. But at the end of the day, our coherent work will determine the success of overall operations. So a few words about the government concept. The key shortcoming that we could note in regulatory framework is lack of a policy paper that would embrace some information about data array. But in principle, we will be mostly make references to the term information, not data. But still, I'm convinced that as a traveler who needs to find his bearings on the ground, he needs a map. The government needs something similar. So what should go into this strategy? This is the key question, and the key word in this definition and the work that would follow is the cooperation of the government with the business and other stakeholders.
It's important to take on board the opinion of everyone, because the balance is the key word here. Now on our agenda we have another bullet point to discuss, which in the context of the processing of data in the public information system is of special relevance, is how to define the ownership for that data processed by public systems. Now everybody's keen on working on it to reflect it in the law that the data processed in the public information systems belongs to the Republic of Belarus. What will it deliver to us? First, it will help us exchange information, and there won't be any need. It will reduce the redundancy of that information. The global information demonstrates that only 30% of the problem related to data processing is related to technology. The remaining part, like 70%, would be about regulation and normative control. So let's look at the uniqueness principle, the overuse of data that was hinted at today. It's very important for us to minimize the number of systems which process, in fact, redundant information. Now we already have some provisions which speak about basic information resources, which should keep the reference data based on which all the decisions are to be made. At the same time, our experience demonstrates that we have a lot of room for improvement here. Colleagues, we need to speak about threats here as well, which are related to all of this. When we speak about unification and processing of data within a single facility of information infrastructure, we, one way or another, will encounter the need to ensure the secure processing of the data, confidentiality of data, and its integrity. In that regard, speaking about this, against the background, there will be a few quotes from the state mentioned by the All Belarusian Assembly organized recently. I fully agree that data processing is of huge priority, and the processes which would regulate the overuse of data at the national level would be a luxury that we cannot afford. At the same time, we must take measures to protect our data. Briefly, I will explain about this aspect of cybersecurity and how we construct it. Now we are witnessing the historical events in terms of the legal field in regulating data. I would remind you that now we have two types of data or information in our legislation: the publicly available information and restricted access information. So based on this division, we construct our approach towards accessibility of these different data. Now we have requirements which regulate the different protection systems, attested protection systems for data protection, through which are involved in the distribution or dissemination of information. You could see the different types of data information on previous slides, and by simple meaning it's already implied. I would like to draw everybody's attention that the attestation of these data protection systems must be done before we start putting them to operational use, and only after that data protection system is properly attested and piloted, we start the process of putting it into operation. Besides, in our legislation we have such thing as critically important objects of informatization. It is no wonder, because in our national infrastructure system we have such objects whose destruction can lead to very serious consequences that can happen in political, economic, and any other sectors. In that regard, our legislation has special notes on how to regulate the protection of information on critically important objects. The owner of such a critically important object or facility must undertake special measures to install data protection systems, and here, of course, the requirements which would be much stricter than for regular information, of course. We've lived like this for a long time already, until last year, to be exact. Last year, in fact, we had a watershed event for the whole country, for every citizen, for every subject of information relations. Here on this slide you can see the quote from the Constitution of Belarus, whereas Article 28 of Constitution is something that everybody is aware of, but Article 34 of our Constitution requires our more thorough attention. Within this article, we see the right of every citizen to get access to reliable information which is processed by public authorities. As a result, because of this right, our public authorities who are processing data based on automation systems have a corresponding responsibility to ensure protection of that information, to make sure that that information that they provide citizens access to would be relevant and up to date, so that they could get access to it normally. So the violation of that access through DDoS attacks is a violation of basic human rights, basically. And providing access to publicly available information until 2023, there was no specific requirement on how to protect this publicly available information. But last year, a new presidential decree was published on cybersecurity, which regulates the issues of formation and operation of cybersecurity system in our country. Those of you who haven't read this law, colleagues, you might think that that decree is only about the state-owned sector, or only those entities which are mentioned in that list. No, it's not so. That decree concerns every single organization that exists and operates in Belarus. A few statements from that document are put on this slide, but I can tell you that each of this statement grounds itself on longer text. I will read through this bullet points in terms of its possibility to form. It mentions only top positions which do not require too frequent of an update. This way we ensure the stability of legislative regulation, but as far as details and techniques are concerned, it is done at the level of bylaws, or rather orders of the Analytical Operational Center, which upon the advent of new threats introduce changes and amendments, and thus ensuring full protection of these critically important objects of infrastructure. As for other provisions of the document, I would urge all the interested parties to read it thoroughly. And also you need to read the concept of information security of Belarus, which has been approved by the decision of the Security Council. And it has quite detailed description of the limitation of such things as cybersecurity and information security. Now in our legislation, these are two different things. Besides, as I mentioned previously, because of the existence of the need to protect publicly available information under that order that I mentioned previously, there are requirements put forward to all the objects of infrastructure that exist and operate in Belarus. Please note that now, in the world, we abandoned the approach when we had to provide protection of only critically important objects. We are coming closer to the new approach when we need to protect the whole body of infrastructure, because unfortunately we can say that successful attacks start from ending up in the unprotected infrastructure, which is not considered critically important object, which do not have special data protection techniques. Some technical measures are mentioned here on the slide. Please note, ever since August 17th, 2023, they are in force, and every organization in our country must follow them. Some of the conclusions. Now, I must say that the cybersecurity at the moment is part of the agenda of any organization, and we must talk about it not only under the specialized panels that bring together specialists on the matter, but who understand some fundamental things, and they discuss only details of this process, but absolutely in any parts of human life, we must keep asking these questions. I'm grateful to the organizers for giving me the opportunity to open this panel with this information statement, and I would like to wish all the speakers here to first focus on the need to ensure cybersecurity of those infrastructural facilities which process data. It's very important because during data redundancy and the approach of which will ensure a uniqueness of information, the loss or rather stop of existence of an object can lead to unpredictable consequences. Thank you very much for your attention. Unfortunately, I cannot be with you here throughout the whole panel, but I will still stick around for the next one or two presentations. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lia. According to this format, we'll have Q&A at the end, but if you have questions for the operational center representative, you can do it now. If not, we then continue. Okay, no questions. Then we skip over to the next keynote speaker, representative of Sberbank Russia. I must say that when we were putting together different instruments, we were studying the good practices of Sberbank, and they have made quite a progress in organizational things, and all those innovations that are actively discussed, they have been already integrated in Sberbank operations. And our next speaker is Sergey Chernov, who will share with us his experience. He will tell us about data governance that we hinted at in theory last year, but now he's going to speak about his practical experience. Can you hear me? I will, stand around, and my name is Sergey Chernov. I will tell you about the data management processes or data governance processes. Each company has data governance. It could be low-level, high-level data governance, but every company has its own system of data governance. That's why there must be a system which can be integrated into company's business processes when it does simple things. Sometimes it does something more sophisticated. Sometimes it creates wonders. But such person must be there. Please look here. These are not balls. These are petabytes of information stored on your servers. They might be, lying around, useless, or they can keep working like this. And most importantly, in data governance is always to have backup. If you keep doing all of these things, it means that the information is going to work for you, and as a result, you'll be able to build more exact and precise reports, and your country will achieve the utmost heights. Thank you very much. That would be the end of my presentation. In fact, that was a bit of a joke. Of course, I have prepared some PowerPoint slides where I will tell you with some visual assistance what I've already given you a trailer of. I've been working on systematization and automation. I've been working in integration companies, and I've been doing state-owned information systems for regions and for federal government. But at a certain moment in time, it was about 2017, I was inspired by machine learning and data science. I was involved in the SBIR competition on, it was a very good assignment to forecast transactions. We had to understand whether those transactions are done by men or women. So it happened that I was one of the winners, and I was invited to work in Sberbank, but I was not invited to work in that particular sector to create AI, for instance. But so it happened that I ended up as a methodologist of those people who are called, nerds. So I'm one of the, mega nerds. But it was quite popular at the time because Sber started to introduce this data governance principle. What is data governance? Why do we need it in the first place? Often people are asking, why should we work on this? Maybe it's quite boring. It's not like speaking robot. It's not like image generation. Here I'm showing some of the basic keynotes why we need it. First, the improvement of the managerial decisions. Of course, decisions can be made based on intuition. You can make decisions after reading reports, but the more precise and exact the report, the better the data you have, the better would be the managerial decisions. Improvement of the data analysis efficiency. No matter how good the report is, if it takes you a year to prepare it, when you put it on the table of the boss, the time will go, and you won't be able to succeed. Ensuring data integrity and information risk mitigation. I don't even need to comment on that. Expediting the training of new employees. Again, it's quite a painful subject because there are new people coming to work at the company. It takes quite some time for them to learn all the ins and outs, what kind of data the company has, and they take too much time from team leads. And creation of prerequisites for digital transformation of a business. Many people want to get quick results. They want to get some kind of digital mathematical transformation. I've seen many times how it is done. Beautiful models are built. They are even tested successfully. They're shown to top bosses, but then they're shelved. Why? Because the processing infrastructure simply is not ready to integrate those models into business operation. They might be beautiful, they might achieve great results theoretically, but if there's no processing platform to maintain it, it won't help. Here, perhaps you have seen my face on the first slide. That was my face when I was reading Drama Cock. I guess this is a very useful book, very useful standard. The main gist from it is the processing model shown on this slide. So the processes, which are shown by Dan Damagog, I'm not going to mention it now because I can speak for hours about this. But I should not ignore the objectives set by data governance here. The three basic objectives. First, the creation of capacity in the organization to manage data as an asset. So what are these opportunities. The opportunity in the industrial operation to use what was mentioned previously is perhaps lying around somewhere on your servers. Second thing are the principles of the metric procedure. No matter how fundamental you're doing it, we cannot abandon it. We must run the processes. We must have regulation that it will be grounded in. And third, monitoring of the compliance of this policy. What does it mean? It means that you can write beautiful documents and regulations, but they won't work. You must keep your eye on making sure that they're up to date, that they're in use, and they're complied with. Regulation for the regulation's sake is not what we need, of course. Next slide is about what is the object of management for Sber. Sber has many partners who work in different sectors. Often it happens that whatever is applicable for Sberbank as a large organization is not applicable for the company which is part of its ecosystem. It might be too cumbersome or too narrowly specific, but Sberbank always set for itself an ambition to efficiently run this ecosystem. That is why the processes which once as data governance were developed as part of Sberbank's methodology, as part of Sberdata, now Sberbank and its ecosystem is putting it in good use. To make it possible, Sberbank has already developed a number of approaches. Many of them are quite failed approaches. They try to use it as is in the company by people who are doing totally different things, who are, making cartoons or some other silly things.
At some point, they set up a unit where I work. It's information consultancy with an associated branch that operates to assist the primary unit. And on the other hand, it has at its disposal the Sberbank's resources. And there are three things which my team are doing. First, measuring the current level of development. Second, consultancy in process development. And thirdly, assistance in setting up communication between Sberbank and its branch offices. I will not elaborate on this. The communication system within Sberbank is quite intricate. There is a vertical directed at the operational data control and CDO. I, for one, represent CTK. This is assistance in process harmonization. This next slide shows how we simplified and somewhat modified the process model. So a portion of processes get duplicated one place or another, or due to the specificities of the bank, they're handled by several departments. So we identified 7 key processes that apply to virtually all companies, whichever they are, whatever line of business they were in. So these are 7 processes on the right-hand side. At the end of the presentation, I will share my team's vision and the sequence of implementing these processes. Views can vary on this. We simply present what we have done based on our experience and through lessons learned. In fact, there are a lot of processes, and what should I start with in this huge data governance system. Well, this can be quite intimidating, a role model for management by Sberbank, and it tends to become even more complicated. It's hard to apply this role model in small-time businesses, employing 5 people, for example. So we've presented a standard model that could work in any environment. And these are not positions of power. These are roles that even one person can play. But who is responsible for certain functions? Who is this person? It's important to be aware of who that person is. Most important person is CDO. If you don't have CDO, then nobody knows what you have inside your operations, where it sits, and how it can be used. If you want to develop data governance, you need to appoint a responsible individual. That's step number 1. And here's for the most valuable part. What simple steps need to be taken? That is to appoint a CDO. Second, conduct a process audit to see what processes are there in a company. 3, to formulate your goals. These are the most secretive steps. Formulate basic principles. Design data governance strategy. A key document providing guidance on where to go. Item 7 through 9 are recommended steps in terms of process implementation. Metadata management, I think, is quite important. You need to take inventory, take stock of what data you have. I will not dive deep into processes anymore. All of them are important. However you arrange them, just be mindful that you need to do this continuously. That's step number 14, and 01 or 02 is to start all over. And then you evaluate CDO to see whether the company is headed to where it wants to go, or does it simply stand still. We have a dedicated process evaluation system which you can use to assess performance. Thank you. Please read my book, Govern Your Data. Thank you, Sergey. Indeed, quite an exciting experience, this data governance. I think people in the field are quite aware of that. If you don't know this book, try reading it and try not falling asleep. So the first presenter, as he said, will be going to another panel. So it's the last chance to ask him some questions. In the meantime, we will move forward. At the TIBO launch event, the minister praised the tax and revenue system as being the most digitalized in the country, and we have a series of talks on this topic. So with this, let's bring Vyacheslav, who will speak about modern automation of tax processes. He represents International Business Alliance. Can you hear me well? I hope we have enough lighting to appreciate the color of my hair and beard. If you have appreciated, then you will understand I will not be able to follow up on what the previous speaker has talked about. I will simply talk. One can assume that I have a lot of years of seniority in this field of expertise, more 40 years to be more exact, which it doesn't even matter. In the biography of my company and my team, there are 20 years of cooperation with the Ministry of Taxes and Duties, which, as was rightfully pointed out, a ministry that boasts the highest level of digitalization in the country. As an elderly person, I'm quite skeptical to fashionable trends. Can you believe me that there is quite a cemetery of activities or measures or things that have been downgraded to certain niches. So I'd like to interpret big data somewhat differently, other than classified in the beginning of the event. As you develop information system at certain levels, the big data appear and you have to start governing it. It's not an overnight phenomenon. You have to take quite a lot of baby steps, working 24/7 to achieve that. So the lofty portion of my presentation is over, and I simply want to break down to you how the Ministry of Taxes quite naturally reached the need to work with, to handle big data. How does it work? What aspects and considerations are required? So let me start off with a bit of history. The Ministry of Taxes and Duties is a major player in the government, accounting for a lion's share of the government's budget. I will not cite any numbers. I don't know if I'm authorized to do it, but the budget is mostly formed by taxes and revenues. It's quite a complicated hierarchy with 3 levels: the central apparatus level, the city level, and the region level. Sometimes district inspectorates are divided into smaller parts, and this is an organization that works and confronts businesses and individuals alike all the time. So it's a non-stop operational cycle. So when it comes to production, banking, software used in the tax agency is unique and non-reproducible, one of a kind, and there's not a single country, not a single government that would allow this sensitive sector to share its software with somebody else. So it's from ground up development. Let's take 1C software that you can customize, but in our field we have to program everything on our own from ground up. So it's non-replicable, clearly. The fact that the tax ministry is closely linked to the country's economy, it goes without saying. The tax legislation is settling down, but some 10 years ago there was some turbulence, and we had to make adaptations to external conditions and external context. The tax ministry cooperates a lot with other agencies and ministries who they receive information from. The tax ministry sometimes requests information from other agencies. Why is that imperative? In fact, the Ministry of Taxes and Duties operations are quite simple. Once a month, all the companies calculate how much they owe the budget. By the 20th of the current month, they need to submit data. If you are overdue, you will get fined. One day later, you have to pay this amount to the Treasury. Not the Ministry of Taxes. It's a collecting and overseeing authority, but it's the Finance Ministry which receives it. So the ministry checks if the full amount was paid. If you overpaid, that's fine. If you underpaid, then you will face a barrage of tax officials' requests. So this cycle, filing declaration on the 20th, paying the next day, repeats month in, month out, with peaks at the end of the quarter. In addition, there are things which we are much more interested in terms of big data. I don't know if you're aware of accounting, but when you fill out a declaration, the figures or numbers included in the declaration are at risk of accountants. Which operations or transactions have been completed are reflected in a declaration, are not included in a declaration. There are only some logical connections, you know. A plus B equals C. You populate a form, and then the tax ministry comes to a pair and asks to pull up some primary documents, primary accounting documents, to verify the submitted information. Of course, it's impossible to do it with every person, every business on a monthly basis. Plus, the public policy seeks to shrink the number of employees, which should be a direct result of automation, obviously. My experience suggests that introduction of accounting software reduces the number of accountants. I think that the staff in companies tends to grow anyway, and this function requires particular attention. They come up with some plans, they assess risks, try to mitigate them. They believe that the government wants to deceive you. So reliability of data is important. Tax evasion is intrinsic in a Slavic person, and you can't erase it. Plus, it is a characteristic of a declarative principle. So a business says, I want to pay this, we receive it, and then we verify if that's the amount they should pay. This is more characteristic of individuals. The tax ministry on its own, based on available information, states, Mr. A, you should pay transportation tax, this, land tax, this amount, property tax, this amount, and then an individual has to pay or tries to dodge payments. But in order to tell the individual how much to pay, you need to have layers and layers of information. So I have cursively outlined the specificities of the ministry's work. Unlike other ministries, the tax ministry works hand in glove with payers, businesses, and individuals. Here's a couple of numbers. I hope I will not be prosecuted for data disclosure after this presentation. 550,000 legal entities and individual entrepreneurs or sole proprietors. Then we have natural persons registered with tax authorities. At the end of the day, we have 3.5 million declarations a year and about 5 million requests coming from the tax ministry. Before the automation, all this work was done based on a face-to-face communication between a tax inspector and a person or a business. We ensured a remote interaction of the ministry and businesses. That was not a simple task. It all started in 2008, and back then the infrastructure dimension was quite different.
For instance, only now the PCs, personal computers start to spread out, the internet started up. Maybe most of you have forgotten what dial-up is all about. So the possibility to interact with the payer were quite strict. And at the time, it was a trend to start working through a browser and a portal. The advantages of this are self-evident. There is no need to broadly distribute updates on working stations anymore. But under the circumstances of that technical condition of the network and equipment, there was no other way around this. I'm talking about the interaction through special applications like desktop applications. There was nothing else that would have replaced it. In the intervening years since then, the hierarchical structure was not centralized. There was no other opportunity. There were also sorts of exchange, data exchange, and all sorts of other bringing up data upwards, and it sometimes took from 12 to 24 hours to receive the final data reports. And with the development of corporate networks, with the advent of new platforms like big clouds, all the tax calculation is fully centralized now. It means that whatever data that are generated at any point of the system are instantaneously available in any other corner of the system. So it works in real time, thus ensuring interlinkage with many business entities through many means and channels. The application that are related to like desktop applications, which at the time were considered to be quite advanced, and among the program developers it was considered to be something which wouldn't last for long, but it continues to be used and is popular because of a number of reasons. So you can find your personal cabinet as an application, and there are some divisions here, like personal cabinet in the taxation system. It includes some smaller and minor business entities and individual business persons, but a large business entity whose declaration takes up to 40,000 different lines, in no application won't be able to fill it in, because there are certain basically solutions for large businesses, certain solutions for SMEs. There are two types of applications, more like information-based, and there is a personal tax applications, also our tax agency application. It proved to be quite successful, and this is what is targeting the payer. It's quite a complicated configuration in terms of the functions. The Ministry of Taxation portal, yes, I forgot to mention that. Of course, there are APIs, I forgot to mention them, but how to use the APIs is not so easy or obvious because of the frequent changes in our tax legislation prevent sometimes those people who work with this application, like who try to integrate their accountancy programs, to update their programs as well. I shouldn't speak too long about this. Yes, I'm coming to a conclusion of my presentation already. So I have just outlined two major things for big data. First, the risk analysis, assessment, examination plans for control work. Next, data collection to maintain the accrued or credited taxes for individuals, and the same scheme is going to be introduced for individuals as well, because the data sets available for us allow us to pre-file some of the declarations, and in the immediate future, at least the initial options for business entities will be developed. Now, what I wanted to say is that big data, AI, they all look and sound great, but when they grow out of those assignments that we handle, we understand that their logic, but if we omit the period of movement towards this direction, when we approach the plateau, when we have pure data in the system, then the work with AI and big data becomes like a play of mind. I suggest we get down to the ground instead. I wanted to do it quicker, but I became too verbose, maybe. Okay, while Vyacheslav was making presentation, I was calculating now, it's 16 years already. It's quite an old system by now. Anyway, the tax sector, taxation sector is not only about how to help a citizen or business entity to share their money with the state. Within this structure, actually, there are many more data generated, and some of the data participants are not even aware of. And discussing the taxation system, we have invited our editorial center so that they could share their thoughts and ideas, how they work with the data generated within their ecosystem. Yes, hello colleagues. I shall try to be brief. I will not take too much of your precious time. I will mention a spoiler. No mechanisms on how to evade taxation or something like that in my report. I will simply tell you about our experience of our company, how we work with data, big data, medium data. You decide for yourself. All the data about retail is taken from our cashier equipment. Cashier equipment or cashier registration system was established some time ago, now 200,000 cashier systems have been integrated there, and now, according to our calculation, we have about 2+ billion payment documents which provide a broad range of possible techniques for their processing to generate valuable data. Aside from the payment documents, the system is connected to the all state classifiers and reference. Docs, I won't go through the list, you can read it on the slide. Also, we work through the electronic passports of goods. Owing to the legislative requirements in Belarus, our business entities must have differentiated accounting, whose idea is to, if we're talking about a shop of 200 square meters or more, then their cashier equipment must have a differentiated accountancy principle, which is done with unique codes, and these codes are given through the database of electronic goods passports or product passports. Now it has millions of different codes. Each code, on the average, might have up to 90 different characteristics attached to it, which in principle also provides broad opportunities for the subsequent analytical work. On this slide, you can see the screenshots of mobile applications which describe drinking water, what it looks like in a passport. On the same information can be used in our analytics. Realizing that we have huge volume of data, understanding that we can do something with the data, our company was started to think to come up with an instrument or a tool for the Ministry of Taxation, first of all, then the instrument that we can use in our operations, and to present some data to the business, or rather sell these data to the business to monetize this project. This work followed two main directions. The first direction, we were writing the methodology, whatever is related to the work of the company and its interaction with the businesses. And on the parallel, we worked with 4 state agencies on the development of unique methodology to calculate the data. You can see our history on the slide. Again, I'm not going to go through all the lines. You read them. Next, as a result, in 2021, we put into industrial use. In 2021, we created the system, and then we put it into beta testing, the informational analytical system. Now the system has 220 components of different types of data and about 130 different information panels, which are used in the work of both Ministry of Taxation and a number of other agencies of our country. As has been mentioned previously, for our methodology, we put together a working group, which included the representatives of the Ministry of Taxation, Ministry of Monopoly, Trade and Regulation, National Bank, National Statistical Committee, and our company is the operator of the system. As a result, in the interests of the above-mentioned agencies, we have created, or rather added to this system, a number of functions that would allow us to analyze data from previous years, and based on the last year's data, select businesses or companies for monitoring in this year or next year. On this slide, you can see one of the examples of the information panel, which has like average receipts for a number of products sold. You can see while the system was developing, aside from using it for our own purposes, we could sell this data to other agencies. Well, not sell, but to give, because it would be great if we could sell. So upon the request from the Ministry of Monopoly, Regulation Trade, we have developed additional functions which are used only by that agency in their work. Also, we have created special functions for Transport Inspectorate, for Belcorp Union, and now we are providing additional functionality for information panels of National Statistical Committee. I will briefly show what those panels look like. So the Ministry of Anti-Monopoly Regulation and Trade, consciously all the numbers are hidden here so that we don't reveal any state secrets here, but this slide shows the ratio between the revenues and the actual receipts of the company. Based on that, the agency can make its own managerial decisions, which it's up to them to decide. Anyway, they have such functionality. As for transport inspectorate, now they have this function to compare in real time the checks, runs, revenues, and control the work of drivers. In fact, they didn't have such a function in the past, which allows them to optimize some of the processes within this inspectorate. Realizing that the information system that we have developed is a very good, useful tool for the work of many agencies. It may be not so sexy in its look, but most importantly, it allows them to solve or perform their duties that they're supposed to perform. For that, we have developed an information resource which would collect together some macroeconomic indicators which, according to our thinking, are needed for decision makers or heads of different departments of ministries. The slide shows an example of this resource. It has been organized based on the principle of some web page, your average web page where data are split into different passports with information panels grouped together, and most importantly they need to answer some macro questions that might come up at the level of the republic or region or as part of some retail chain or a special group of goods or products. I guess this presentation is going to be made available to all the participants, so I'm not going to go through the whole list. I tried to show it on slides, what kind of information can be found in that information resource, which is made available to our state authorities. Our immediate plans include the data mass which has been collected already and which already allows us to use some machine learning models, and from the standpoint of future ideas, to give ideas to businesses, what kind of automation opportunities we'll have to, I don't know, what needs to be, what can be concealed, or what should not be concealed, so to say. And in the immediate plans for us is to create specialized resource for businesses, which, according to our idea, based on specific applications, we'll try to share this information online, which is sorely missing with businesses. But for that, we need to solve one important thing, which is the aggregation and depersonalization of the data. That would be all. Thank you very much. Thank you, Alexei. It was a fun presentation indeed, one of the examples of state-owned companies that learned how to find practical benefit from the data that they collect. They haven't learned yet to make money on this because of the reasons which are beyond their control, but maybe you'll succeed in future. The next speaker will be the representative of mobile operators, who is one of the examples where they learned how to monetize the data, although according to the recent news, not everybody is happy about that, but let us listen to that presentation. Evgeny Tikhanovich, head of the Information Services Department from MTS, telecom operator. Can you hear me? Very good. The mic is too low for me. Anyway, I'll do my best. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is indeed Evgeny Tikhanovich. I'm head of the Innovation Services and Planning, Network Planning from MTS Telecom Operator. Today I'm going to speak about geoanalytics. Who and why would need geoanalytics? What role must be played by telecom operator here? And in conclusion, I will speak about the useful experience which MTS company has gained. To begin with, what is geoanalytics? I've allowed myself to handpick a number of definitions of that notion. You can read it on the slides. They're different, and at the same time, each one of those definitions are true. What are they about? They say that geoanalytics, on the one hand, is a science, on the other hand, it's an instrument. Thirdly, it's the application of some kind of methods. It's a learning process. It's even art in itself. Depending on the context, all these definitions can be considered true, and they are true indeed, but I believe the most exact or precise would be the following. Geoanalytics is the process of collection, processing of geographical data to make managerial decisions. The key word here is the process. Why the process? Because the objectives related to geoanalysis can pop up once in a while, but the collection and processing of data to perform those or to implement those objectives must happen all the time. And the second key thing in that definition is the decision making. What kind of decisions geoanalytics will help you to make, in fact, different ones, because geoanalysis objectives can happen in different sectors, but all those solutions have one common trait: all of them are expensive. The wrongly made decision can lead to significant losses, and at the same time, other way around, correctly and timely interpretation of data of geoanalysis can allow you to rationally use quite limited budgets. On the other hand, the limited budgets is not something unique. Everyone is familiar with this notion both in business sector and in state governance system. That is why the interest toward the projects related to geoanalysis, especially over the past few years, has been actively demonstrated both by commercial companies and state authorities. So, what geoanalytics is based on with telecom operators? Actually, like most of other business lines of telecom operators, based on users. People call each other, people get and send out SMS messages, people use mobile apps, people use telecom browser to use internet, even when we are not using our cell phones and when it's in our pockets. Even in the background, it generates traffic. All these events are registered with a special basic station which covers the use of that particular subscriber, and it is linking it to a particular time, space, and location.
Later, the data can be extracted to solve different tasks. MTS has advantage by having a software-hardware system that collects data online and stores that data. It allows us to conduct retrospective analysis or ex-post analysis 12 months back. The most effective geoanalytical projects are those where you have most of the high-frequency reference stations. But it doesn't mean that if you put a station on each post, you'll have better data. Our experience shows that successful projects are when the spacing is about 300 meters. This rule works in all major cities. So we can do these projects quite successfully. Moving into specific tasks, there are a few sections I'd like to identify: urban infrastructure development, road and itinerary development, car parks, transfer car parks. These are the things that catch eye of public authorities. Secondly, opening new offices, new trade outlets. One of the key components of success is a good location, and smaller companies such as cafes or coffee shops experience that firsthand. The next section is effectiveness of road advertising. To date, neither ad owners nor creators don't have a precise tool to evaluate performance of outdoor advertising. You can't count ad contact, and there's no way of telling who are those people who catch or who see the outdoor ads. And thirdly, the analysis of tourist streams. The key anchors of attraction are well known, but when it comes to reaching those places and how frequently these people and who those people are go to those places out of frame, even though they're quite critical to infrastructure development. So telecom operator can make a sizable contribution to resolving this challenge. I think I've clicked the wrong button here. Here it is. Thank you. Something went wrong, something's gone sideways. So let's put theory on its feet. Let's start off with a large project which MTS conducted last year. We analyzed movements of more than 1.5 million within 1,400 polygons in Minsk. We have to analyze movements of people within a few days with 15-minute intervals. This was only the first step of the project. We also had to track movements of people between metro stations, and from 1.5 million people we dissected school children and we analyzed them, this target group, and then we extrapolated the MTS user data onto the general population of Minsk and suburbia. This project showed that geodata themselves are in conflict with other data that TC operators have, which makes them more valuable. The ability of MTS to enrich this data with more properties makes a competitive edge for the company. You can also extrapolate the specific data onto general population. This project worked out quite well. The outcome was a few movement matrices. Partly this data went into some urban planning projects. There was a follow-up to it. In the city of Brest, there is the Smart City project being implemented, where they look into the transport overloads. This is the second project where we monitored effectiveness of outdoor advertising. There are two questions we want to answer. How effective was the completed advertising campaign? And secondly, how to formulate the future address plan to spend ad money effectively. At the heart of this approach, there is an personal movement matrix using azimuths. So you can manually or using filters of different kind set the data, and then users will get data on total number of contacts with outdoor ads over any period of time, with all the address pool that was created, and with every ad surface that was established. So users will be able to segment or break down by gender or by age, and you will be able to count unique receivers of ad content to make informed opinions or decisions about performance of various ad campaigns. So this is a mixture, the nexus of data and geodata, and we believe it will be successful. At the end of my presentation, I'd like to emphasize three important things. Geoanalytics is an area of natural interest of telecom operators because of a large number of users who can benefit from this analysis. It's not secondary but a primary interest of the company. Second, large data arrays that telecom operators have that you can enrich and break down using various filters and settings. Despite everything I said, there is no need to wrap your smartphone around in tinfoil. We don't track our users. Any data processing is automated and it's anonymous. And thirdly, the final point is that MTS company is well experienced in doing projects. Public and private, and MTS stands ready and has desire to continue getting more experiences and enrich its expertise. So if we compare and if we combine your data with the data of previous speakers, that will be a beauty. So in order to obtain this thermal imagery, you really have to suffer. You really have to work a sweat, you know, to plot all those dependency graphs. So a few words about tools. We'll have a technical director, Igor Kostyukovsky, technical director of Nevek Soft company. Hi everyone, can you hear me? I'm Igor. I'm with Nevek Soft company. We have been working with big data quite a lot. We started out in 2014 with an apparently simple task of a centralized system. Back then, you could hardly find a 256 gigabyte flash card in Minsk. That's what we called big data. So we had to look for solutions to process relatively large streams of data, and we realized that we need to duplex data, desegregate data, store the data, and provide it to our customers. So what is a big data system composed of? It all begins with data collectors. It uses different software which collects data using different protocols. This data goes through mediation and duplication if necessary. With mediation, we collect all data in one place, enrich it if necessary, and send it to a storage layer. Deduplication, well, there are a couple of systems which can have duplicated data. The database cluster is there to provide it to final users, end users. And after all the hard and quite tedious work, we have happy users and reliable systems. So let's start with the database. It's one of the key components of a system. It's like a child who can't get enough of food. Just look at me. There are several key principles we must follow. We must feed the system in a careful way, remove peaks, give data consistently and without overdoing it, because any database can become a point of denial. You must feed the system regularly, without delays, and should we change something, we must change it gradually, without any sudden movements. So as a result, we have primary requirements for the system. Our database must support sharding. It must support replication. Should we lose a system, we must not lose the data. So there mustn't be a single point of failure. For example, we need to count the average receipt, and we must count it in real time. Effective data compression. We're talking about big data for storage. Even though storing data becomes less costly, you need to store more and more data. Quick recording, if we use distributed systems, quick write properties. And in ensuring quick write properties, we must also provide for quick read property, because there could be more readers than writers. Request prioritization function must be embedded with the queuing function. And API to control database clusters. Storage monsters are telecoms. Sberbank is going to have a good laugh looking at it, but we are a small country after all. 50 server storage with 3.6 petabyte of storage is the record we hold at the moment. 30 seconds is an average time of statistical report generation, and 5 seconds is a general time for reading an analytical report. Collectors is something without which our system cannot receive more data. On-the-fly format conversion, productivity. In some cases, productivity is quite important, and a feedback may be requested. A system that sends data must get a response that data has been received. Interesting cases for collectors that we managed to implement over the decade. In telecom radius, ASN1, integration with ASN uses files, but still quite interesting. Net provider gives linkages inside API with external internet and raw traffic collection. In banking, our point of pride is collecting data from mainframes. That was quite difficult. We had an interesting infrastructure project where we collected SNMP. Then we had regular IT where we collected files, logs, APIs, API logs, and as Alexei described, there was an interesting case with data collection from cash registers. So we can boast a speed of collection of 50 gigabytes per second, which is quite powerful in my view. Deduplication, there are two types of it, cold and hot. What does cold stand for? It stands for retrospective data, and we need to carefully create the database for the time where it should have been created. We are aware that all the data that comes into column cluster brings down productivity quite a lot. Hot deduplication is a pretty standard solution in such systems. The most important thing is to have the solution productivity.
As you can see from this slide, we have two interesting cases on deduplication. First case is when we every second process more than 3,000 requests that end up in the funnel of deduplication out of the file exchange. It's about 50 gigabytes per minute of the accumulated files. Mediation and aggregation. What does it all mean? It's like stitching data from different sources. It's enrichment of one source of data with the data from another source. It's permutation of a file exchange system. There are always files that need to be stitched together. Preparation of data upload to the database. The most difficult thing for distributed systems is to select where to do the aggregation. It can be either local collectors or somewhere in the center before it enters the database. At the moment, we can brag about the use in all our installation of 492 core CPUs for the mediation. And it goes without saying that most people like the visual stuff, and in spite of the fact that we do not use graphical user interface, but we do it for our customers anyway. Here you can see an example of one of the systems that I mentioned at this meeting. Please note that numbers here are also designers' idea, it's not real. So, thank you for listening to the presentation of Navexsoft. Thank you, Igor. We are moving on now. We have 1, 2, 3 more keynote presentations, and after that, we'll be able to start the Q&A for all our speakers. I see many questions coming to my cell phone, so we have many things to discuss. Back to our agenda. I invite now Alexander Kovalyov. While he is moving towards the stage, he's the first speaker from that company. Mentioned that he witnessed personally the birth and death of many technologies. I will tell you briefly about one of such technologies. I have smart home technology in my house, although smart home has died many years ago. Now I just received the message that my tap is leaking. See, sometimes long forgotten technologies can bring unforgettable impressions too. Hello, dear colleagues. As you can see from the slide, I work in the company International Business Alliance, and some time ago, to be exact in 2018, we were honored to implement a project which is called Single Platform for All State Automated System and Automated Information System of Interdepartmental Communication. Some background story. OIS is like an old thing, and once it was implemented by a very good company, but still that was implemented on Oracle, and there were some problems on how to keep it working, or for it to keep running and to maintain that system. And they had an idea to implement about the same functions, but a bit more ramified and broader, but on open source technology now. As original requirements, what it should be built on, there was only one single requirement: Postgres and some private details about authentication, authorization, and the matter of principle for them, which was put forward by the customer, is the ability to quickly create and put in effect state services and administrative procedures. Now, within my presentation, I would like to tell you about our goals and objectives, basic principles that laid out the foundation of our system, some words about the architecture of OIS, and I will tell you also why, owing to which, at this stage, OIS is becoming a true instrument that allows us to quickly put in effect new state services and administrative procedures. The goals of this project included the development of interdepartmental communication systems, facilitation of communication between the government, citizens, businesses, and of course, ensuring security, some kind of interaction with external information systems, owing to which OIS has become an all-state system in our country. In the context of implementation of this system, or rather in the context of the terms of reference that we received, we had to develop a system which would ensure seamless interaction with other systems. And in Belarus, when we started working in 2017, we had a patchwork or a zoo of different systems, sometimes more compatible for integration, sometimes totally incompatible, sometimes they had file exchange system. Now the situation has drastically changed. The things we could do under the systems, I show only main things. Authentication, we had to do authentication in full accordance with the data stored in the system, which is called now single system of identification certification. Many of you might have these cards already. So with those cards, you could identify yourself in the system and get access to personalized services independent of whether you're an individual entity or you're a representative of a business entity. Authorization is also another thing which was seriously handled within this project. We have done it. We have provided access not only to some individual data sets, all data lines, but we also provided access to separate components, both visually, but BNB functions as well, and this control has been done both on up front and in server part. And the interaction with the information system was quite a straightforward solution, which ensures the interaction with virtually everything. The interaction with external systems was taken as a basis that this interaction should be done through GSM scheme, through REST API. That is why in some cases we had to develop special adapters which would have processed or modified the external interface into native interface compatible with our system, and the e-service management is that erector set that I referred to previously. That's what formed the foundation of this open source, the scalability, horizontal scalability, functional scalability, and quick integration of all new services. We have used the technologies which have been quite rudimentary for about 10 years ago, but at that time, 2018, we went to cluster governators, which helped us solve first set of tasks of horizontal scalability. The functional scalability has been performed by creating an instrument that would allow us to introduce new services, new systems, which is about the same, and the productivity or performance was done through the second thing, horizontal scalability through the Docker containers. This is a bird's eye view of OEs. There are two types of environment: admin environment and production environment. They are incomplete, by far incomplete, and on the left you can see the erector set of electronic services through which we build new services. The new service, any service which is created in our erector set, quite a complex configuration which describes both front and back, and the logic through which any service will be performed. Our experience proves that the use of this instrument allowed us to, let us say, speed up by many times the introduction of new services. Moreover, the use of this instrument, I believe it was quite successful in its implementation, allowed us to have many internal services implemented with the same erector set, like, for instance, user management, role management, or schedule, for instance, same thing, or the work time calendar that we use in our system quite actively. And now let's look at, okay, I'll describe it differently. We have worked with such systems before. Before that, we worked with the national segment of the system, and the experience of working with erector sets moved our thinking towards transition from more complicated, narrowly specialized platforms like OAs, for instance, to more minimal but more like universal platform, which is the core of authentication, authorization systems. How do I go back to? I'm back now. Okay. Sure enough, logging system and the actual erector set that would allow us to build up the functionality, that specialized functionality required for a specific sectoral platform, be it retail, be it tourism, education, and this universal platform solution shown on the screen, something that we came up with. Please note that on UI we have a number of modules implemented with restroom, which implement those functions which previously were simply impossible or quite hard to implement in browser mode. It was problematic because it is quite a slow communication link with low performance working stations. Now the situation has changed, and some of the functions which previously were performed by the server can already be moved over to the client without any loss of without any significant losses for the end user. And now on this slide you can see some of the functions that our erector set allows users to do. Like with this use, you can build quite complicated UI servers and up to quite complicated database tables, implementation of business logics through BPMN and through the connection without BPMN, but through the regular call-ups of services in certain sequence, the shaping up of database schemes, REST API scheme formation. There are many things if you read the whole list. Also different version management and creation of business process models. In fact, this is what allows us to use now OIs as a prototype to build many new state systems, not necessarily related to any specific administrative functions, procedures, or e-services, but more specifically to create those systems which can implement actual business objectives or assignments. Some screenshots which show how our erector set builds different artifacts of different services. This is data model. This is validation. When writing the erector set, we can put in the prerequisites that we check our data against. That's all I had to tell you today as far as our OIS is concerned. Thank you. Thank you, Alexander. I think everyone has heard about OIS, aside from lazy people. So it has indeed simplified the use of information from other information systems. You have removed some of the headache from the developers of future information systems. Job well done. Thank you. Okay, back to our regulations. Our next speaker is Mikhail Chashin. He will speak about standardization in data management. He is a Belarusian expert, not only from Belarus. Mikhail. Hello, colleagues. My slides are in the system, so they're on the screen. I can start. Allow me to introduce myself. Digital Development Center, head office, headquarters of the digital development in Belarus, permanent member of the International United Technical Committee, JTC1. Here, I must say that the particularity of international standardization of JTC1 is that each one of its standards is the consensus of experts of the whole scientific community at a responds to the needs of the whole market. Now, the committee has published already 3,500 standards, and they're developing 524 more. That includes 23 subcommittees, 40 full-fledged members, including also Belarus, and 62 observers. The slide shows the list of subcommittees and working groups. At this moment in time, we have subcommittee number 32, Data Management Interchange Committee, which has more than 100 different products, with its working group number 6 on how to use data. Also, recently there was established a joint working group for urban data model for transport planning. In May this year, there was a plenary meeting of JTC1 where they approved also a pilot project for the new coordination strategic group on Meta Universe with the following requests or assignments: to integrate external environment data and to do strategic analysis of opportunities, potential projects in this field to fill in the gaps. The members of that group were practically all the main subcommittees and its working groups. Additionally, to that coordination group, we have also approved a pilot project for the existing coordination group on data management and data governance. Actually, it translates the same way in Russian. And now the issues of data governance have turned into an absolute priority for digital development, which is testified by the list of working group working on it. And this is a very interesting table which shows the rating of technologies done by the technical committee, or rather its second advisory group, and it has showcased it in Tokyo in 2023. I have identified, or rather highlighted, the areas which are related to data governance, and you can see the high rating of interest inspired by data governance systems. 83% consider them super important, 52% consider it just interesting, and 33 people consider that they have official national plans for data governance already. I guess it's quite a telling result in that respect. And now I'm going to show to you 2024. Once again, at the 2024 plenary, they presented an overview of international experts who have demonstrated the principal trends. And once again, as you can see, we have questions about data. Among those questions would be the priorities on cross-border data exchange, which didn't have before, and the city-verse system. Also, now we have a very interesting direction called datafication.
A technological trend that transforms aspects of life, phenomena into information. So, let's identify the following areas: semantics, classification, metadata register, reference architecture, terminology and data use scenarios, reference data model, data management model, interaction data exchange, data quality, and big data analytics management processes. ISO 8000 has about 100 parts, so if we want to take it on, we need some sort of a strategy, a plan to work hard and for a long time. Our committee has approved one of the national standards, and look at the roadmap this way. Here's a list of international standards already adopted and operational. They need to be reviewed and perhaps modernized and customized to fit the Belarusian context. At the end, I want to say that the Joint Information Commission is open for us. We have a chance to be its permanent member and also to send our national experts to its subcommittees. Yes, it's it's quite costly, it's time-consuming, but the global experience is out there, and let's tap into it. We need to learn, so let's develop the national standardization strategy. That's all from me. I hope I made it all right. Thank you very much. How this standard family takes shape. There are enthusiasts who are devoted to the cause. We'll discuss it later. We'll have the final presentation now. Once again, let me remind you, people came and went. We will have the presentation in English, so you can pick up a device like this over at the registration desk if you can't follow it in English. Let's check it, by the way, and listen to a UNDP expert, the use of data for developing national strategies and development systems.
Hello everyone. Hi, how are you? As mentioned, unfortunately, I do not speak Russian, so I will have this little earpiece to understand what everyone is saying. So if you don't understand English, then I invite you to collect this ear device. Okay, perfect. The presentation is up in Russian. I will have the English presentation here, since I don't understand Cyrillic. Okay. Perfect, okay. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. My name is Anna, and I work at the Chief Digital Office of the United Nations Development Program. And today I will be speaking about how you can leverage data into the design of national development plans and strategies. And before we get into that, then I will provide you with a brief introduction onto what we mean by data. I'm sure that most of you understand the different types of data, but I will go through that quite quickly. Then I will go into a specific... Apologies. Let me see. Let me see if I can get this right. There we go. So I'll go into a couple of use cases so you can understand how different ministries and countries have actually incorporated data into their strategies and plans in other places. And then after that, then I will explain a little bit how you can build capacity in this area and what we can offer as support at the United Nations Development Program. And then at the end, there will also be some time for questions. So what is data? This I'm sure the majority of you already know, so I'll go through it quickly. But data is a collection of information. It can be from numbers or from observations. It can be either quantitative, so numerical, such as age or salary, or it can be qualitative, so descriptive, from pictures, from observations. We can use data for different outcomes, so we can use it for insights. We can also use it to identify different gaps within society, and also for ensuring transparency and accountability. Yes, so different types of data sources can also be categorized into traditional or conventional data sources and emerging or new data sources. So some of the conventional data I'm sure you're all aware of. So that's government statistics or non-government statistics, usually collected by national surveys on demographics and so forth. Whereas non-governmental statistics include different sources, including academic studies, publications, or information from other databases. And maybe just a quick question. Has anyone here already worked with conventional data in the past? Can you raise your hand in that case? No one. Okay, good. Then this is new for all of you. Yes, and then we also have emerging data, which can be Earth observation data, it can be spatial data, or it can also be sensor data. We also have commercial data and citizen-generated data, which it's personal, whereas the former was non-personal. So we can have a little quick look at these different types of data sources. So Earth observation includes satellite imagery data and aerial drone imagery. Spatial data is also included here, and that is this data based on geographic area or specific locations. And then we have sensor data generated from numbers of sensors and devices used to measure events and detect some sort of input from the physical environment. Now on the emerging personal data, it's quite interesting. So we have commercial data, which is basically sold by professional data providers, and they can actually fill a gap that currently exists within official statistics from the government and so forth within different areas. So that's quite interesting. It can be from social media, it can be from GPS data, for example. It can also be from credit card or debit card transactions. So that's one new type of data that can fill this societal gap. And then on the citizen-generated data, that is also quite interesting. So that is, as it sounds like, it's data that is generated by the citizens when they feel the need that there is a missing data gap that needs to be filled. And here I have a nice little example of that. So I know in Beijing, citizens were actually creating these air quality sensors and put them on kites so that they could improve the air quality in their countries, but that was actually driven by citizens themselves and not the government or the private sector. And what do we mean by leveraging data into the design, into these different strategies and plans? So it enables rapid strategic actions that can, because it creates new insights, but then at the same time, it can also help in the long-term development of these strategies and plans based on these insights. It also enables a proactive instead of a reactive approach, and can also give a better comprehension of the quality and the impact of a national strategy or plan. So how does this work in practice? I'm going to go into 3 different use cases from 3 different countries so that you can get a little bit of a sense of how that data has been used to provide new insights in different sectors. So the first use case is from Moldova, where the government had some challenges when it came to road safety across the country. And to mitigate these road accidents, the Security Inspectorate and the road administration collaborate together with UNDP with the help of geospatial data to track these different car accidents and the roads to understand what could be improved and what not. And this fed into new plans and strategies from public institutions to basically make the road safer. And this is what the map looked like, the digital map. The next use case is from Turkey, where after the, I'm sure you're aware of the different earthquakes that the country experienced last year, and many locations were suffering from illegal debris dumping, and the government had a big problem with this, so they wanted to use data, emerging data, to support them in this problem. And with the help here of aerial data and geospatial data, they were able to enhance their tracking capabilities of these locations and actually understand when debris needed to be sent to a new place, and also understand how that whole situation could be improved. So that was one way that they used the emerging data. And the final use case, it's from North Macedonia, where they had issues of local financing practices. So different municipalities lacked the digital infrastructure and also the capacity to have these good practices in place. And what they did here was that they used something called data-powered positive deviance, and that was a combination of both traditional and non-traditional data to basically collect indicators on what good municipalities were doing in terms of local financing mechanisms. And with the help of that, they were able to create roadmaps and actually inform other municipalities in improving their financial practices as well. So now you've seen how this can work in practice, specifically with emerging data. Now, how can you build the capacity to understand how you can do this yourselves? So the United Nations Development Program has created a data to policy initiative that is basically a suite of different tools and products. So the first one is a data to policy navigator, which basically guides stakeholders who are developing, designing, and implementing national strategies and plans, and incorporating data into that whole decision-making process to create better insights and better strategies and plans. We are also having different data to policy projects in different countries, such as Kazakhstan, Turkey, and Kenya and Moldova, where we're already supporting certain stakeholders and incorporating data into their decision-making processes. And then finally, we also have a network to connect stakeholders with one another and learn from one another on best practices across ministries in different sectors. So this is Santi Muliani. So she leads, this is a hypothetical case, so she leads the development in the Ministry of Labor of her country and is therefore responsible for developing and overseeing a set of different strategies and plans in her country. And the labor market in her country is currently suffering because they have a very high youth unemployment. Santi's been asked to develop new strategies to improve this situation and the challenges that the country is facing. And after the COVID-19 pandemic, she understood that data could be used in different contexts to improve and actually help solve these types of problems. And a colleague of hers were recommending the Data to Policy Navigator, so she goes online to check out this website. And this is what she finds. So this is a whole methodology of the Data to Policy Navigator. So it's a step-by-step approach into how a public official or a government official can integrate data into the whole decision-making process and developing a new strategy or plan, all the way from defining the problem, identifying the right data sources, analyzing that data, and then integrating it into the policy or the strategy. So all of these previous steps were outlined on the website. So also on the website, then you can find different resources and tools from each of these steps, and also the sub-steps that you're seeing here. So more information can be found on that. And then throughout this step-by-step approach, then there are other aspects that you want to take into account, as well as having healthy data ethics or a good data governance, as was mentioned here by some of the speakers previously. Also fostering a culture of using data in a good way and developing institutional mechanisms that can support the continued use of data in the design and strategy development. So a little bit about the tool. This is not a tool that UNDP decided to create just out of the blue. It was created with the help of decision makers who are working within the government. So more than 15 stakeholders were included in that process of developing this step-by-step approach. We also got expert advice from more than 20 different stakeholders from the private sector, from the public sector, also from international organizations and so forth. And on the website, you also have the opportunity to submit your own use case. So for example, in the case of North Macedonia or in Moldova, for example, those are use cases that have been submitted to us via our website. So if you have one of those use cases where you've used emerging data in some type of project, then that can also be submitted via this website, and other people can find it there as well. So the Data to Policy Navigator also comes with a network, which is basically used to connect, as I mentioned a bit previously. It's used to connect different stakeholders working in this field across ministries, across sectors, so they can share best practices and understand how they can improve their own strategy development and design. It also contains different knowledge products, so curated articles within specific topics on how to maybe improve data governance or data ethics or some of those practices. You also find different types of use cases that you can interpret and maybe you can apply in your own context. And you also have, yes, the network, as I mentioned. And we do have a training for this entire step-by-step approach that I was mentioning on the Data to Policy website, the Navigator website. So this is a training for 3 days for government officials, mid to senior levels that has decision-making power and are working on designing and developing and implementing national strategies and plans. And they can be from all different ministries, so it's not that just one specific ministry is invited. It can go across different line ministries, and that's actually something that we want, because then the whole stakeholder mapping becomes better. And this is just a little bit of an example from the Colombia training that we had earlier this year, and the ranking was really, really high, and a lot of government officials came away with a lot of new knowledge on how to integrate data into their design of strategies and plans on the national level. So it was a 3-day workshop and with a very high ranking, yes. And in this case as well, I want to add that there were ministries, there were different officials from different ministries, so the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Labor. So that's something that we encourage. And here you can access the Data to Policy Navigator, the tool, and see this whole step-by-step approach by yourself and see the resources and the tools that you can access. So you can just scan this QR code, and that way you can get immediate access to the tool and learn a bit more if you are a bit unhesitant or you want more information on how it works. And then on the left side here, you will get access to the network if you scan that QR code. And on the right, we have a data and AI session that is coming up. On the 12th of June, we have the next one. So this is something that we continuously do as well with this tool. So we create these learning sessions on very specific topics. And then finally, what you see here, and I invite you to participate here. So this is a survey for the digital readiness assessment that we launched this week here in Belarus together with the Ministry of Communication and Informatization. So it was launched this week, and it is a survey-based tool to evaluate the digital readiness across the society of Belarus. So it involves different pillars such as people, regulations, businesses, and we want as many responses as possible to get that integrated societal digital transformation. So I invite you to access that QR code and provide your answer. I can also share the presentation afterwards, so you have access to that. And at the end, we have time for a few questions if there are any. And I also invite you can come up to me and ask any questions you have. Thank you.
Коллеги, чтобы 2 раза не снимать наушники, есть возможность задать вопрос сразу. Пока вы думаете, я поделюсь опытом.
You can shoot your questions right away, colleagues. I will share my experience. It was in 2021 or 2020. I had an assignment to analyze, how do I put it correctly? To analyze the efficiency of undertaken measures for traffic safety. So in other words, I had to map
принятые меры, в частности, лежащие полицейские, какие-то другие инструменты обеспечения безопасности дорожного движения, и посмотреть, и, наверх наложить ДТП, как изменилась динамика.
Overlay it with a number of, car accidents. I think it was Leninsky Borough, Minsk. Anyway, the idea was that these are the measures undertaken to reduce the number of car accidents, and this is the statistics of car accidents. The results were quite interesting. It didn't look so beautiful and high quality as other specialists demonstrated previously, but still, the findings proved to be quite interesting. And I personally was quite afraid of reporting on that. I sent it to my director because the dynamics was that there were some questions, or rather it was implied that there might be some questions with the findings, but still it proved to be quite an interesting instrument to use the data, and our MTS representative mentioned that if you put overlay different data sets together, you can get very interesting analytics which you would never come up with if you just put your single mind to that. So this is an interesting case how to manage traffic in the city, and the solutions could be quite fun as well. As long as there are no questions for the UNDP representative, then we go back to our original speakers. Colleagues, would there be any questions for our previous speakers? Please raise your hand, and our assistants will bring over the microphone to you. While you're thinking, I will ask some questions as well. I made a few notes here. First thing I wanted to ask Sergey from Sberbank. Tell us, please, all those new fashionable professions that are described in data governance. You mentioned CDO already, right? One of them. It's not always to introduce a new staff with such beautiful title. Other specialties, that data analyst, you must have a data engineer, you must have a research scientist, right? Such things which are described in your staffing regulations. Do you have all of them, and do they prove to be useful and valuable? And are they now an integral part of your ecosystem? Please share. My response would be the following. As I mentioned previously, it's not really like part of our staffing. It's more like a role model that they perform. And some of those roles find reflection in the current structure of virtually any organization. Like if we take data owner.
Да, бывает
Okay,
нелегко
it
определить,
might be
кто
hard
владеет
to
той или иной
understand
там
who has
информационной
the
системой
ownership of this or
или
that
тем или иным
data
массивом
system
данных.
or this or that
Но
data
очень
set.
часто
But
реально эти
often
владельцы
these
есть, и их
data owners
идентификация
are
очень
there,
важна.
and it's very
Здесь
important
вот
to
введение,
identify
например,
them.
роли
Here,
владелец
to
данных
identify such a
позволяет
role as a data
сделать
owner allows us
работу более
to make
прозрачной,
this work more
не
transparent
утяжеляя ту же
without
самую штатку.
in
Также и с другими многими ролями.
putting too much pressure on our
Если вернуться вот
staffing.
к
The
CDO
same
все-таки,
would be
да,
true about the
то
roles if
в
we go back
небольших
to CDO.
организациях, да,
In small
совмещение
organizations, I
возможно,
agree, there might be
но
some
если
combination of different
организация
roles, but if it is
большая,
a large
то все-таки
entity,
лучше
then
выделить
it's better
одного или
to
даже, может быть, несколько
have
человек для
one or
выполнения
even a
этой
few
роли.
people to perform
Работа
the
им
role of
найдется,
CDO.
поверьте.
I can promise you they will
Вот.
have their work cut out for them.
Это какие-то структурные
Are these some kind of
элементы,
structural elements
специалисты из
or
компании,
specialists
или
from the
уже
company,
рынок
or
предоставляет такие
are you
специализации?
outsourcing
Потому
them
что
from
вопрос подготовки этих
the
людей — это тоже
market?
отдельный
Because to
вопрос,
train those people is a
который,
separate
наверное, мы не
challenge
обсуждали,
that we
но
haven't discussed here.
выйти сейчас на рынок и
But to
и
go
там
out
объявить
to the
вакансию
market and
дата
say
консул,
that we have a
это
vacancy
же
for
не знаю,
data
что
council,
в ответ прилетит и
I don't
прилетит что-нибудь.
understand whether anybody would
Согласен
come
с вами
forward.
полностью. Вот когда в
I
2017
fully
году
agree
в
when in
методологию
2017 I started.
Сбера меня взяли,
I
да, у
was
меня
taken
там
to
ничего
methodology
резюме
department
не
of
было
Sberbank. I
про
had
там
nothing in my
CDO, data governance и так далее.
CV about
Более-менее
CDO or data
релевантный опыт,
governance. More or less relevant
соответственно,
experience
какой-то адаптационный
or some
период,
kind of
когда люди
adaptation period
вникают,
when people,
понимают, что под
you know,
этими словами
get
подразумевается.
immersed
И опять
in
же,
this
наличие уже внутри
ideas
структуры
and
и
the
культуры,
existence of certain
оно и обратную связь к рынку
corporate culture generates
приносит.
certain
Да?
feedback
Если,
to the market
например,
as
там,
well.
5 лет
Like if,
назад
say, 5 years
вообще
ago,
никто там не слышал, кто
nobody
такой там
heard
владелец
about
данных или CDO,
data owner
то
or
сейчас,
CDO.
особенно на тематических
But now
конференциях,
at all
все
thematic
практически на одном и том же
conferences,
языке.
everybody's
Да,
speaking the
огромные
same language,
конференции по
really.
управлению
Huge
данными, по
conferences on
качеству
data
данных.
management and
Все
data governance,
пользуются этими
or call it
терминами,
data
и
quality, and everybody's
плюс-минус
using this
понимают
data.
одинаково,
More or less,
кто
everybody
эти люди.
understands who those
То есть,
people
да,
should
наверное,
be.
вы там
Yes,
владельца данных не
you
найдете, но вы
might not
найдете
be able
специалиста,
to
который
pinpoint specifically who the
поймет,
data
да,
owner
кто
is,
такой,
but
примерит на себя эту
specialists at least
шапочку, и
understand
потом будет
what you're talking about.
выполнять эту роль.
Когда надо премию выписать, владелец данных
One,
быстро находится, когда
it's always easy to find data owner when you want to provide them a bonus, but you want to punish them, that's a different story. Recently I read the news that when some large banks in Russia have unified their client databases, which allows them to generate additional profits, like to prevent violations of this and also to personify offers to their clients. Have you participated in this process? How did you agree among the banks on unifying the system? Actually, here the process of data exchange between the players of the market, attempts at this exchange have been at work for quite some time. I wouldn't say that now we have a single database that unites our banks. No, it's not like this. But we have some information exchange with the agreement of the user when certain types of data companies can exchange. But it's still quite a challenging issue and quite painful one. Even within Sberbank, it was quite a long project to unify territorial bank data.
В России много смеялись над этим,
In
что
Russia, it was a laughing stock when it was impossible to get a Sberbank card. Fortunately, it's no longer a problem, but the creation of such unified database within single company is already a big challenge. Here, it was mostly like MOUs were signed and some information exchange. Some people might know more about it, but that's how I see it.
У меня еще вопрос
I have
к
yet
спикерам из
another question for the
компании
speakers
МТС.
from MTS.
Поделитесь опытом, вот вы рассказывали про
Please share.
проект, а как вы
You
находите
spoke
друг
about
друга?
your project. How do you
Компания
tend to find
генерирует
each other?
какие-то
Is it the
идеи,
company
бегает по рынку,
who
предлагает
finds
что-то,
new
у нас есть
project
данные,
ideas
мы вам
and
готовы
then
там
runs
какие-то
around offering this project
инструменты,
ideas
кейсы,
to others,
там,
saying that you are
аналитику
prepared to
показать,
show
либо
some
там,
analytics
условно
or
говоря, там, городская
instruments, or
администрация или там
maybe it's
клиенты
some
вас находят и говорят,
city
что мы вот
administration
подозреваем, что
and
на
their
основании
client finds
ваших
you saying
данных
that we
можно
suspect
получить
that based
такую
on your
аналитику.
data we can
Как
get
это
this
вот
kind
в
of
жизни
analytics.
происходит?
How does it work in real life?
Ну, на самом деле в
In
жизни
fact,
это
in
происходит
real life it
обоими способами,
works
которые вы
both
описали.
ways, as you have
В случае
described.
с
In case
Минском
with
с тем
Minsk
проектом,
Grado,
с которого у
the
нас,
project that
можно сказать, начиналась
we have
геоаналитика,
started our
это был входящий
geoanalytics with,
запрос.
it was the request coming
Мы
from
узнали, что
outside.
есть
We have learned
интерес к
that
такому
there is some
проекту,
interest to this
и мы
project,
решили, что мы в
and we
состоянии его
decided that we're
реализовать, и
capable of
убедили
implementing it.
заказчика,
We
мы
confirmed
это
our
собственно
customer,
реализовали. Если
and we
говорить
have
про
done it.
МТС-охват, о
Speaking
котором
about
я
MTS
рассказывал,
coverage that I
здесь
mentioned,
скорее инициатива
here the
внутренняя,
initiative was more grassroots.
связанная с тем,
It's
что
related to the fact that now we have a new market niche vacated. There was a company that was monitoring the external market, a couple of external market of external advertisement market, and they left the country about a couple of years ago. And so there was a vacancy in the market, and we filled it in for the market and for ourselves. We intend to implement it.
Вот, ну,
Okay.
новости
And,
были, публиковались о
have
том,
you
что
published
не
the
секрет,
news?
наверное, да, что вы
I think it's
продаете,
no
да,
secret
данные,
that
в том
you
числе для
sell
рекламы.
data also for
Это
the
каждый раз
advertisement. Each
поиск
time
кого-то внутри
it's
компании,
like
чтобы обсудить,
finding
что
for
вы
somebody
реально
new
предлагаете
within the
клиентам, или у
company.
вас есть какие-то
What do you
готовые
have to offer? Or
датасеты,
you have
которые
some
вы
ready
размещаете
to use
где-то,
data
с
sets
ними
that you
можно
place
ознакомиться,
somewhere.
посмотреть,
People can look
что
at
вообще
them
можно
and
получить,
see
потому что
what
уже каждый,
theory they
кто
can
работает
expect
с
from you,
аналитикой,
because
он сам
everyone
поймет,
working
что
with
ему с
analytics,
этим
they will
делать
understand
и
how
как
to use
обогатить
this
свои
analytics,
данные,
how to
используя в том
enrich
числе ваши
their data
данные.
with the use of your data.
Как вот в этой части.
How does it work?
Во-первых, не совсем корректно говорить о
It
том,
would
что
be
мы продаем данные
incorrect to say that
в
we are
открытом
selling
виде.
data
Мы
openly.
такого не делаем.
We don't
У
do
нас
that.
есть ряд сервисов,
What we
которые
do, we have a
направлены на
number of
обогащение
services
данных наших заказчиков, в том числе из банковской сферы.
with which we can enrich
Даже
our
с
customers, even
тем
if
же
we take
Сбером
banking
мы
sector like
работаем,
Sberbank, we work with
в
Sberbank
части с кредитного
in terms
скоринга.
of credit scoring.
Банк
For
пользуется
instance,
нашими
bank
данными в том
uses
числе.
our data, among other things.
Вот, но здесь
And
тоже
here
история
it's
идет
also
скорее от потребности рынка. Если
the
рынок
initiative
чувствует,
comes from the
что
market.
таких
If
данных
the market
ему
feels that
недостаточно, он
it
начинает
is
их
missing
искать.
some kind of data, it
И
starts looking for this
некоторые
data,
данные
and
действительно
some
можно
data
найти
they can
у
find indeed
телеком-оператора, но здесь есть
with telecom
очень важный
operators,
нюанс,
but there's
связанный
one
с
important nuance here
законодательством. Далеко
related
не
to the
все данные,
legislation, and
которые
all
может
the data
интересовать бизнес,
that might be of interest to
можно
businesses
продавать,
can be
потому что
sold,
у нас есть
are
законодательство
sellable,
с
because we
персональных
have
данных.
legislation about protection
В
of
нем
personal
четко
data,
оговорен порядок,
which
как
clearly
персональные данные
describes
должны
how
и
personal
могут
data
вообще
can be
использоваться.
managed or used.
Ну, на самом деле, не секрет,
In fact, it's no
что
secret
любое
that
действие, даже
any
мысль в сторону
action or even
персональных
thought
данных
towards
требует
personal data
согласия
requires
владельца.
endorsement
Есть
from
законные
its
способы
owner,
такое согласие получить.
and
И
there is a way to get
в
this
случаях, когда
endorsement,
оно
of course, but
получается,
when we
может
get
идти
it,
речь про
then
какую-то обработку данных,
we can process these
которыми
personal data
владеет
somehow
телеком-оператор,
owned
за
by
запросом
telecom
внешних
operator upon the request from some
организаций.
external organizations.
Ну, понятно, что
Okay,
там, обсуждая, никто
understood.
там, не
Of course,
стремится.
nobody's
Ну,
trying
может,
to,
рекламные
or maybe
компании
some
стремятся, но
marketing
технические
companies are
специалисты, я
trying
думаю,
to do that,
прекрасно
but technical
понимают, что
specialists are well aware
на
that
персданные,
they
даже при наличии
cannot
согласия, какое себе
put
удовольствие,
their hand
потом,
on
если
personal
начнутся
data,
вопросы,
because then if some
не
questions will
отмоешься,
start,
что
it would be
называется. Но
hard
в
to
целом, как
clean yourself
понять,
up.
какие данные
But how to understand
компания,
which
как
data
сервис продает на рынок? Там
can be
нужно каждый
sold
раз
by the
запрос
company
писать,
as a
или
service?
все же
Should
какой-то
we
там.
write the
Вот
request each time, or does it work in another way?
презентации
For instance, in the
представителя
presentation of the
издательского центра,
representative of
они
the
вот прям там,
editorial
по крайней мере,
center,
в крупную
they
клетку
specifically
опубликовали. Если вот такие
published
какие-то,
what
не
kind
знаю,
of
списки,
data they
перечни,
have,
еще
what
что-то,
kind of
описание
lists
вот у вас в
they have.
открытом
Do you have
виде, и
some
это
kind of
каждый раз
description
надо.
of
Потому
kind
что
of data
у
sets
меня
you
и
have?
даже
Because
практический
I
вопрос. У нас есть
have a
клиенты,
personal,
которые вот
practical
ставят
question.
цели
We
или
have clients
задачи,
who
и
assignments to
данные
us,
особые
and
компании вполне бы нам тоже помогли
I'm
решить
sure that
задачу клиента.
telecom
Но
operators
это
that
нужно
would help us
дофантазировать, а
solve
есть ли у
the
сотовых
problems,
такие данные,
but we have to
попытаться
fantasize whether
найти.
На самом деле, я бы
telecom
сказал, что
operators have
сейчас
this
у
data.
нас рынок именно данных, он
To tell you,
еще
the data
формируется.
market is still
Поэтому
under development here,
и мы,
and
и, наверное,
that is
другие
why
игроки на этом рынке,
both
мы
us
сейчас
and other
работаем
players on the
от
market
запроса.
are
То есть от
mostly
потребности,
working
в зависимости от того, что нужно
on a
бизнесу.
needs-based.
Поскольку опыт еще нарабатывается, то каждый раз, когда возникает
on a
какой-то
need-to-know
запрос,
basis.
производится
So each
предварительная
time
аналитика,
when there is a request generated, we first do the preliminary analytics, whether we have such data and whether we can provide it legally. So to answer your question, each need requires
Но
separate
деньги там
analysis.
есть, или это пока
But
так?
there's some money in this business. What do you say?
Деньги там есть.
Yes, we can make some money in this business.
Главное
It's just
знать,
that
как
we
их
need to know how to
правильно и законно
monetize
взять.
this business and do it legally
Так,
as well.
вот у меня еще,
Thank you
может
very
быть,
much.
вопросы в зале
Maybe
появились.
some
О,
questions
это
from the
Тимур,
floor.
да,
I can see many
гора
hands.
рук.
Very good.
Так, коллеги, кто мне
Colleagues
поможет
who will
с
help me with the
микрофоном?
microphone.
Организаторы, есть
Do we
кто-то,
have
кто...
assistance
Там свободный
with the
микрофон
microphone?
в
We
зале.
have a free
Вот
microphone in the
стойка
room.
стоит
Ah,
справа и
there is
слева.
a
Пожалуйста,
microphone stand
желающие
on the
задать
right, on
вопрос,
the
будьте
left.
добры, к
Those
стойке
people who want to ask
подойдите,
a question,
чтобы всем
please
было
approach
слышно.
the microphone stand.
Я тут...
Работает?
Is it on? Okay.
Слышно меня, да?
Can you hear me?
Спасибо за интересные
Thank you for
презентации.
very
У
interesting
меня два
presentations. I have two
вопроса, вернее, один
questions,
вопрос,
or
второе
rather one
предложение.
question
Я
and
представитель
one
Национального
proposal. I
статистического
come from the
комитета.
National Statistical
Первый
Committee.
вопрос Алексею
First question goes
Смольгину.
to Alexei Smilgin.
Предоставляя
By
данные
providing
госорганам для
data
принятия
to
решения, у
public
вас существует
agencies
какой-то
for decision
механизм
making, do you
оценки
have a mechanism
качества
to assess
данных,
the
которые
quality
генерирует
of
ваша
data generated by
информационная
your
система?
information system?
То есть данные
In
должны
other words,
быть
the data must be
точными, надежными,
exact,
достоверными и
precise,
так далее. Какой
truthful,
механизм оценки данных
and
вы
reliable. What
применяете в
mechanism of
своей
data assessment
системе?
do you use in your
И
system?
второй,
And
спасибо
second,
за
I
ответ. И
thank you in
второе
advance
предложение
for your
представителю
answer. And the
МТС.
second
Очень
question for MTS
заинтересовали
representative.
ваши
I
возможности,
was
которые
inspired by
можете
your
предложить для оценки
opportunities
туристических
that you can
потоков.
offer to assess the
Поэтому
tourism
взаимодействие
flows.
с
So I
Белстатом
think
было
it
бы
would be
нам
great for us to
пообщаться с вами, и, возможно, у нас бы
collaboration
организовался
with
какой-то новый
Belstat.
проект
Maybe we
этой
can
части.
put
Спасибо.
together an interesting project.
Ну да,
Thank
если
you.
позволите,
Yes,
по
if I may,
качеству данных,
as far as the
безусловно, мы
quality
знаем свою
assurance, we
проблематику,
know
которая у
the
нас
problems
есть
that we
с
have with
данными,
data,
и то,
and
что мы разрабатывали методологию по
the methodology we
предоставлению
developed
госорганам
on
2 года, это
provision
говорит о том, что
this information
работа
to
велась
state
серьезно
bodies
для
means
того,
that
чтобы
the work was done quite
разработать какие-то
seriously to develop some kind of
алгоритмы,
algorithms
нормализации,
and
алгоритмы очистки
normalizations
и
and
прочие вещи. Поэтому мы проблематику знаем,
purification,
с этим
cleanup
работаем,
algorithms. So
и
we know
поверьте,
all
мы
about
чистые
it.
данные отдавать не
Take my
будем.
word for it. We are not going to provide raw data.
По поводу предложения посотрудничать, мы
And as
абсолютно
far as
открыты,
the
готовы встречаться
cooperation,
и в рамках
collaboration
мероприятий,
proposal is
отдельно
concerned,
за
we are
их
prepared to
рамками
have a
обсуждать,
meeting and
какие
discuss it
потребности
within
есть у вас, и
the
стараться найти
scope of
оптимальное решение.
ТИБО or elsewhere.
Ну, я много лет работал со статистикой
worked
в
with
отрасли,
statistics
знаю, что Надстат любит
for
всегда,
many
чтобы
years,
все
and
было
I know
четенько,
that
корректненько,
Belstat
но
loves all the
концепт работы с
truthful
большими
and
данными, говорит,
reliable
чем
data,
больше
but
данных,
the
чем
concept
больше
to work with
источников,
big
тем
data,
лучше
the more data
аналитика.
we have, the
Поэтому
better is
иногда,
analytics.
на мой
Then
взгляд и на мой
personally
практический
believe,
опыт, некоторыми
and based on my
аспектами
personal
можно
experience,
пожертвовать
some
во имя того,
aspects
чтобы
can be
получить более глубокую аналитику
sacrificed to
или
get more
найти
in-depth
какие-то
analytics
зависимости,
and
которые не
find some
всегда лежат по
dependencies which are
поверхности.
not always
Там попадет это уже в
obvious.
сборники, не
Whether it
попадет,
ends
это уже
up
вопрос
in
вторичный,
your publications
первичный,
or not,
можно найти
that's a
ответ
secondary
на,
issue.
даже на
But
незаданный
primarily you
вопрос.
can find answers to
Вот.
some
И
of the
чтобы
questions
далеко от
that you haven't
Алексея
even
не
asked.
уходить,
And to
подскажите, Алексей,
leave
на текущий
Alexei
момент,
for
вот там было перечислено
handing,
2 слайда
please mention at
перечень
the moment
данных.
you
Тут
showed two
такой же
slides
вопрос
on the
к
list of
МТС.
data.
То
Same
есть
question
как
as
сейчас
for
получить?
MTS.
Нужно
How to get
приходить к вам с
your
письмом,
data?
заключать
Should we
договор,
come with a
пока
special letter to
портал
you, sign an
разработается, на
agreement?
котором это все будет, или какая
Or
форма?
how do we approach you about your data?
Учитывая, что мы
Considering that we are
организация государственная,
a
это,
state-owned
безусловно,
organization,
накладывает
of course
определенное
it
обременение на то, чтобы
puts
на
certain
публичный доступ
burden
выкладывать тот массив данных,
on
который есть.
publicizing the
Надо
data
понимать, что
sets
мы
that we
работаем
have.
по двум направлениям.
You need to understand that we work
Работа
along
с
two
бизнесом,
business
работа
lines.
с
We work with
госорганами.
businesses,
И
we work
это
with state
разные
authorities, and
подходы,
these are
это
two
разные
different
массивы,
sets
это
of
разные
approaches,
классификаторы.
different data
Вот,
masses,
поэтому
different
готовых
classifiers.
решений у нас
So we
нет.
don't have ready-to-use solutions.
Наверное, базово, когда меня
And
спрашивают, скажите,
basically,
что
when
вы
people are
можете
asking, what
продать,
can you sell to me,
я говорю,
I'm
после
telling them,
посещения
after
гипермаркета
visiting
посмотрите в чек. Вот, и на
supermarket,
этом вам
look
можем
at the check,
развернуть
we can
различных измерений.
show you
Наверное,
different
да.
dimensions of that
Вот и к
receipt
МТС
of the
вопросы к
supermarket.
вам.
Same
Может быть,
questions to
какие-то
you
есть
and
тестовые
MTS. Maybe
датасеты,
there's
чтобы
some,
можно
there
было,
are some
там, условно
test
говоря, там,
data sets
загрузить 100
where we
полей,
can
положить в свою
upload
систему,
100 fields,
посмотреть,
put it into our system and
насколько
see
качественнее получается аналитика у
what
тех,
is
кто
the quality
работает
of
с аналитикой, с
analytics for
большими
those people who
данными,
work with
что-нибудь
analytics
такое.
and big data,
Пока
something like
не
this.
потрогаешь,
Because
не
so far,
понимаешь.
until you touch and
Публичных
feel it,
датасетов нету, но
no,
по
we
запросу
don't have
можем
publicly
рассмотреть
available
возможности
data sets,
представления.
but upon your request, we might provide you with something like that. Similarly, with us, we don't have ready-to-use data sets that we have to share. We don't have it, but upon request,
Все, что в рамках закона,
anything within the
и
law,
все, что
we can
нас
provide,
и вас
and
удовлетворяет,
whatever
мы
would be
очень готовы
satisfactory to
обсуждать.
you and us,
Там с этой
we
стороны
can
я
do
видел
that.
два
From that
вопроса.
side, I
Так,
saw a couple of
микрофон,
more
пожалуйста.
questions. Please approach the mic
Раз-два.
stand.
Добрый
Testing,
день.
testing. Hello.
Меня зовут Максим
Good evening.
Корневец.
My name is
Я
Maxim Kornevets.
являюсь сотрудником
I am
Гипросвязи.
employee of
И у меня
Giprosвязь,
вопрос
and
возник к представителю
I have a
МТС,
question for
Евгению.
MTS, Evgeny.
Вопроса два на самом
I have two
деле.
questions,
Один
in
больше
fact.
этического,
One is more
другой
about ethics,
методологического
another is
характера.
about methodology.
Начну с первого. В продолжение
First,
прошлой дискуссии по поводу защиты
to continue
персональных данных.
our previous discussion
Да,
about
мне
the
как
protection of
специалисту
personal
с
data
работы,
sets as a
специалисту
specialist
по работе с данными,
working
очевидно,
with
что никто не
data,
будет
I'm find it obvious that
отдельно
nobody's going
следить
to
за каким-то
separately
конкретным
monitor
человеком,
any
да,
individual
по его
citizen
персональным
on
данным,
their
но тем не
personal data,
менее
but still,
вопрос,
the
связанный
question
с защитой персональных
related
данных,
to
все еще
personal
актуален,
data protection is
и
still relevant for us.
интересно узнать, как вы преодолевали вот
So I wonder
эту
how
трудность,
you
как было
overcame this
получено это
difficulty.
разрешение,
How did you
и в
obtain
целом,
this
как эти данные
authorization?
были вами
And
спарщены, получены.
how did you
Вот.
merge and
Ну, смотрите,
obtain
на самом
this
деле
data?
здесь все зависит от
It all
задачи,
depends
для которой
on
нужны
a
те или иные
specific
данные.
task
То есть
for
если,
which
допустим,
data
речь
is
идет про
required.
предоставление
If
каких-то данных
it's
о
about
физлице,
obtaining
у нас,
data
например,
about
есть линейка
a
услуг,
person,
направленная на банковскую сферу, в
we
первую очередь
have
антифрод скоринг. В них
anti-fraud
речь идет про обогащение
scoring,
данных заказчика данными телеком-оператора.
where we talk
Вот
about
здесь
enriching
все
personal
очень
data with
просто.
telecom operators'
Предоставляются
data.
данные конкретного физлица по
So
запросу заказчика, но
here
они предоставляются только в том случае,
the
если заказчик
personal data
подтверждает
is
факт согласия
provided
этого физлица на
only if
обработку его
the
персональных данных
customer
компании МТС. То есть это прямо
proves
форма, в которой описано,
that
какие именно
or
данные физических
corroborates
лицо
that
поручает
they have requested it.
нам обработать, то есть дает разрешение нам обработать.
And then
Ну и,
we
соответственно,
get
видя это согласие, мы понимаем, что мы
a
имеем право
consent
взять там тот или иной блок из базы данных, каким-то образом
to
обработать и
get
отдать его стороннему лицу.
some data
Есть другая история,
from
связанная,
the
допустим, с
database
геоаналитикой,
and share it
когда речь
with
идет
somebody
про,
else.
допустим,
When it
проект по
comes
анализу
to
перемещения людей,
geoanalytics
то есть
and
здесь
its
как таковые персональные данные, они
person
не
movement
обрабатываются, потому
process,
что
personal data per se is not processed
нам не интересно
because we are
перемещение
not
конкретного
interested
человека.
in the
Для
movements
нас в
of
данном
a
случае
particular
человек
person.
выступает объектом, который
For us,
перемещается
a
из точки А в
person
точку Б. У
is
этого
an
объекта
object
есть,
going from A to B.
понятно, данные, которые его характеризуют, там,
Of
допустим,
course,
номер телефона или
this
личный номер
person
паспорта,
has
это персональные
data,
данные. Мы их ни в коем
passport
случае не
data,
трогаем. У
phone
нас у каждого
number.
абонента, условно
This
говоря,
is
есть некий
personal.
внутренний
We don't
идентификатор,
touch it.
который
But there is an
просто
identifier attached to that
подтверждает
person,
его уникальность внутри нашей базы
which
данных. Он никоим
proves
образом не
that this
характеризует
person
человека как
is
такового.
unique
Соответственно, для таких
in our
задач, как
database.
геоаналитика, мы пользуемся этими данными. И нам
So
этого
this is the
достаточно.
kind of data we
Как
use
только
for
речь идет про
geoanalytics.
любые данные,
But when
которые
it
составляют
comes
тайну
to
связи
any
или
data
относятся к персональным данным
about
согласно законодательству,
personal
на этот случай опять-таки
data
есть
and
уже форма согласия,
privacy,
которую получаем
then we
мы
have
как
to
оператор
get a
связи.
consent form
Но
signed
там есть ограничения, что обработка
with
этих данных возможна только
limitations
для цели
that
оказания
data
услуг.
can be
Поэтому они
processed only for
используются
provision of
крайне,
services.
наверное, практически не используются.
So I don't think this
Хорошо, спасибо.
has ever
И
been
второй
used.
вопрос, как я уже
And
сказал,
my
связан
second
больше с
question
методологической частью, именно с
is about
вашей
methodology,
геоаналитикой, да?
your
Такой
geoanalytics.
вопрос. Вообще, в целом,
In general,
я так понимаю, вы в
I
целом
understand
использовали эти
that
данные
you've used
уже
this
непосредственно
data
для какого-то конечного анализа, нежели для
for end analysis,
задач, связанных с
not
машин-лернингом,
for
нейросетями, да, это все-таки
specific
было уже
tasks of
больше
machine
готовая
learning
аналитика на основе
and
полученных
neural
данных, да?
neural
Тогда,
networks.
соответственно, у меня возникает
Yes.
вопрос, связанный с
So
репрезентативностью
then,
этих данных.
my
Вы
question is about
обуславливались
data
тем, что
representativeness.
данные характеризуют лишь пользователей МТС, или же
Does this
вы
data
пытались найти какие-то
represent
выходы для того, чтобы
only MTS
репрезентативно
users,
характеризовать
or you've tried to
полученные
look for
вами
ways
результаты?
to increase
Здесь,
representation
на
of
самом деле,
data?
ответ, да, меня плоховато слышно. Здесь на самом деле нам очень помогает то, что компания МТС
A
является
big help
лидером
here is that
телеком-рынка.
MTS is the
Что
leader
это означает? Это
on
означает, что
mobile
у
market,
нас
which
высокая
means
рыночная
that
доля,
we have a large market
и
share,
на самом деле большая часть абонентов
and
мобильной
most
связи, которые есть в
of
Беларуси,
the
это
mobile
абоненты МТС.
users
Соответственно,
are our users.
практически везде у нас есть достаточно репрезентативная выборка для
So
того, чтобы на
everywhere we
основании
go,
анализа
there is a
собственной базы
sufficient sample
экстраполировать эти
to
данные
extrapolate this
на
data
полное население той локации. Я
over
говорил об этом,
entire population of a
в принципе, и в докладе.
specific region, which I mentioned in my presentation.
Спасибо.
Thank you.
Вот в развитии вопроса представителя гипросвязи.
To follow up on
вопрос у вас там на слайде, я помню, где-то там, когда вы там 1, 2, 3,
Кипросвязь
4 шаги, с чего
representative
начать рассказывали, был
question.
там, по-моему, за цифрой 7, возможно,
When you posted
такой
those
пункт
steps,
культура и этика работы с данными.
after
Мы сейчас про то же
step
самое
7, there was
говорим, или что
data
в данном контексте понимаете?
processing culture. What do you mean
Здесь
here?
разные аспекты, есть
There
культура
are
и
various
этики, да.
aspects of ethics and
Есть культура и
culture.
этика, которая
There's
в обществе
ethics and
принята.
culture.
Здесь ведутся там большие дискуссии, что этично, что не этично,
established
где
in the
границы.
world, in the
И пока как
society,
бы
what's ethical, what's
это все
non-ethical, where the
движение
boundaries lie.
рабочее. Второй аспект
Another
культуры, он
aspect of
внутренний.
culture is
Очень многие
intrinsic,
люди,
internal.
работая в
A
разных
lot of
компаниях,
people
не
working
понимают
in different
последствия
companies
каких-то своих
are not
простых
aware of
действий. Да,
consequences
например,
of their
сидит
simple
оператор, ему
moves.
удобнее
Let's say
в
there's an
стране,
operator,
не знаю,
and
страну рождения указать самую первую.
it's
Он не
easier
думает, что потом, возможно, исказится
to
какая-то статистика где-то, не знаю,
provide or to
и
hit
все
the first
испортится. Да, и он
country
просто даже об этом не
possible
думает,
in
не
the
знает. Он
country drop
выбирает
list.
первый пункт,
So he
поскольку его
just
никто не
hits the
заругал, он
first
думает, что
item,
все нормально. Это тоже
and since it
аспект
hasn't been called out,
культуры
he's
и
okay with
этики,
it.
понимания человеком, оператором,
So it's about culture,
может
it's
быть,
about ethics,
аналитиком того,
it's
что его
about
действия
awareness
приводят к каким-то определенным результатам.
of analytic operators.
Какие-то прописанные правила внутри компании, рекомендации?
Are there any in-company rules, regulations, or you need to punish before
Она пытается быть
changes
немного
are made?
шире, чем наказание и регламент.
Culture goes
Просто даже
beyond
разъяснением
regulations and
того, какие
punishment.
последствия
Maybe
могут быть
simple
вообще для
explanation
компании
of
или для какого-то случайного человека или для
the
страны,
consequences
уже
a
можно
company
добиться
will
такой
face or a
мягонькой,
country will
мягонькой силой
face, you
существенного
know, this
улучшения.
soft
Тут скорее разъяснительная
approach,
работа,
outreach
образовательная работа, пояснительная работа. Она
and
уже многое
education.
даст.
This will go a long way.
Ну да, спасибо. Вот у Евгения из МТС спасибо за доклад.
Eugene
Я,
from
насколько понял, это все же
MTS,
данные не
thank you for your
GPS, а
presentation. So it's
триангуляции,
not
насколько я понимаю.
GPS data,
И
it's
вот в этой связи
triangulation
хотелось бы
data.
узнать, а какова точность
And in
реальная
this
их?
regard,
Ну, не
what's
такая,
the
которая,
actual
возможно, могла бы
accuracy,
быть, а
not
вот
the
та, с которой приходится
possible
каждодневно работать. Вот
accuracy,
какой,
but the
какие там
accuracy you
вот
deal
все-таки
with
цифровые
every
показатели
day.
точности в метрах, например?
Спасибо за вопрос. Действительно, это не GPS-данные, но
Indeed,
и
it's
это не
not
данные
GPS
триангуляции.
data, but it's not
Триангуляция,
triangulation
она
data
технически
either.
возможна, но она
Triangulation is
возможна, скажем
technically
так,
possible,
на индивидуальных объектах.
but
Когда речь
only
идет про
on
анализ
certain
больших массивов,
sites. When it comes to large areas,
к сожалению или к счастью, пока
unfortunately or
такой
fortunately,
возможности нет. Поэтому
we don't have this
здесь скорее
opportunity yet.
анализируется, в докладе я говорил о том, что мы собираем статистику по сетевым событиям. Мы понимаем, в какой момент времени какое событие, абонентское устройство происходило на каком секторе. И ориентируясь на уровне сигнала, который мы фиксируем на этом устройстве, мы можем определять, в какой примерно точке пространства он находится.
Device,
Как
and
я
then we
говорил,
can know
достаточным считается
where a person is
радиус
located.
плюс-минус 150 метров.
So a range of plus minus
диаметре окружности.
150 meters or a diameter of 300 meters is sufficient for the purposes of our geoanalytical projects. We don't seek, you know, 1 meter accuracy
опять-таки, как я уже упоминал, все зависит от плотности покрытия
or
сети.
high resolution. It's all
То есть,
about
чем больше в конкретной локации
network
высокочастотных
density.
базовых станций, тем точнее мы можем
The more
определить,
dense
ну, мы и любой оператор, в принципе, может
the
определить
location of
местоположение того или
reference
иного объекта.
stations, the better we are in determining
Для этого, например, для того
locations
же
of
билборда
people.
считается достаточным 300 метров, да?
So
для
for
заказчика. Они
billboard,
считают, что это,
I mean
ну,
for
или
outdoor ads or
Для
billboards, 300
билборда,
meters is
да, этого
sufficient.
более чем достаточно.
Yes,
Ну,
it's
там
more than
используется
sufficient,
вообще не совсем такой подход.
but it uses a different
Это
approach.
даже избыточная точность.
It's excessive accuracy for this purpose.
То есть считается, что со 150 метров можно, в принципе,
So,
понимать, ну, что там
150
написано,
meters
да, и
is
какую-то
enough
информацию оттуда.
to
Как
discern
я
what's
говорил, там
written
используется метод векторов
on a
перемещения, то
big
есть
board.
мы смотрим
We use the
не по одной точке, а мы смотрим по целому
Vector
вектору, как
shift.
изменялось местоположение устройства, и мы понимаем, в каком направлении это устройство
movement.
передвигалось. Ну, соответственно,
So
его
where
носитель.
the vector
Я понял
goes,
сейчас, да, то есть
the
дорога,
user
например,
goes.
и по дороге человек движется,
So
соответственно,
there's a
вот
road,
около дорожное
person
пространство,
goes
он
along
будет
the
его
road,
понимать, видеть,
so
да?
this
То
road
есть там, что справа,
will
слева
be the
движение,
vector,
да, например?
Да.
walking on the
Спасибо.
right or on
И
the
вот
left.
еще у Алексея хотелось бы узнать из Министерства по налогам и сборам, да, такой вопрос. А вот относительно
also,
вот этих данных
Alexei
с
from the
кассового
tax
оборудования,
ministry,
да, вот если в процентном соотношении,
with
может быть,
cash
есть такая информация, сколько вот таких
registers.
точек платежных, да, с которых эту информацию можно получить, вот от общего количества, например.
So do you have
Я на
any
слайде
information
показывал, у нас
about
сейчас подключено
the number
порядка
of
270 тысяч устройств.
devices that you collect information from, 270,000 terminals or cash registers are engaged in the system. So we know where something occurred, in what town, in what village, in what store. Let's say I live in suburbs, and until recently, the Belcoop Union, the store network, public store network, would issue receipts that are still obsolete. It depends on the kind of a receipt. There are more upgraded receipts. We haven't done this analysis, but generally, up to 70% of all receipts are one way or another carry information about the station. But do you have a way of saying which kind of coffee is ordered more? Is it cappuccino, latte, or whatever? Only indirectly.
Изучением больших данных, да, всегда
Big data experts
самым первым один и тот же хрестоматийный пример
read
про памперсы и пиво.
the Pampers versus
Я
beer
правильно понимаю, что у
example,
нас в
first of
стране
all.
самый популярный товар?
Do you understand correctly that
Проводили
beer
такую
here
аналитику,
is
чё
the
или
most
хлеб больше
popular
всего
product, or
продается?
is it bread that sells the best?
Проводили, конечно,
We've
но
done
я,
analytics,
наверное, не
of
буду
course,
называть
but
какие-то
I will
товары.
not announce
Да, и
the
еще
leader.
в контексте того вопроса, который задали из зала,
And
в контексте
also,
еще вопрос задам. Мы, в вашей презентации так прозвучало, и, наверное, мы
in your
обсуждаем
presentation you
в
mentioned
основном
it.
геоаналитику,
We
учитывая специфику
mostly
работы
talk
сотовых
about
операторов. Но я правильно
geoanalytics.
понимаю, вы же аналитику даете не только пространственную.
But it's not
Вот
only
перед нами
spatial
была секция
analytics
по
that you provide.
кибербезопасности, выступал
We've had a
представитель из России, там
cybersecurity section
рассказывал
before you,
про
and there was a Russian
разные
representative
аспекты. Он прозвучал, что говорит, вот мы знаем,
who
что
said that
самое популярное мобильное приложение
the
в
most
России. Там казалось, что это не
popular
банкинг, не
mobile
госуслуги, а
app
там какая-то игра, эти там
is a game of a
линейки,
kind.
шарики составлять.
You
А
know,
у
to
вас
build
такого плана аналитика
rows.
вы проводите? То есть можно
It's
узнать,
not a
допустим,
banking
самое
app, it's
популярное
not
мобильное приложение
anything like
у
that.
абонентов МТС?
So,
Что самое
what is
больше
the
скажет?
most popular, what's the most downloaded app over at
у нас
MTS?
операторы в стране не то чтобы
As you know,
могут,
our
а даже
operator
обязаны хранить статистику о том, какие ресурсы посещают пользователи.
simply
МТС,
must
помимо того, что является
store
сотовым оператором, еще
information
и интернет-провайдер, поэтому мы эту
about
статистику,
what
разумеется,
information
храним,
users
и отвечая на
download.
ваш вопрос,
So we
технически, да,
store this
вполне
information,
можно
and
проанализировать
technically,
по
yes,
нашей
it's
базе,
possible
какое
to
приложение,
tell
допустим,
which
какой
app
ресурс является
or resource
более популярным за
is the
промежуток
most
времени.
popular or has been
Другой
downloaded
вопрос,
the
что
most over a certain period of
практического
time.
применения, ну вот именно вот так
Practically
сформулированной задачи
speaking,
может не быть, кроме как просто
this
интереса ради.
task seems
Но
to
технически
be
это вполне возможно.
У нас были
uninteresting,
запросы,
except
связанные
for
с
the
аналитикой похожего
technical
плана, как-то
part
призадумались в
of
свое
it.
время. Вот. Хотя на самом деле даже запросы, кейсы по геоаналитике они есть. Ну, вот одному
We
из
do have
клиентов
geoanalytical
на
requests. One of
основании
the
их
clients
технологических данных,
approached us,
где
provided
как
technical
расположены в
data,
городе
and
пункты, как
we
технические
tried to
центры
figure
работы с
out
клиентами, а где на самом деле живут их не клиенты.
where
Там
their
тоже
clients
получается,
actually
на фоне
reside,
тепловой карты, даже там невооруженным глазом
overlaid
иногда
with
видно
a
явно
thermal
что клиент
map,
где-то вот тут, а ближайший там
and you could
пункт
see those
работы с
thermal
клиентом где-то
patches,
через дорогу, а
thermal
эту дорогу
spots,
еще
and
нужно
you could see
найти
this
переход,
is
чтобы перейти.
where client
Вот,
live
понятно, что
and
эти
where he or
вещи
she
неплохо
have
используются для
to
оптимизации
go
там собственной
to reach the
розничности и так
office.
далее. У нас у партнеров из России
One
был
of our
кейс,
partners
они
in Russia
считали
had a case where they calculated
для магазина химии, да, ну, типа наши
for
где всякие там косметики,
you know,
какие-то еще
household
истории.
chemical goods
Они считали
section.
прогноз остатков
They've
товара.
done a
И
forecast
по
of
итогам обучения там работы с бизнес-моделью дошли до такого уровня,
inventories,
когда система
and they've reached the
предсказывала,
level
что
where
такого-то
the
числа
system
к,
predicted
там,
that
условно
by
говоря,
a
12
certain
часа дня у
date,
вас должна быть вот
by
конкретно в этом магазине 2
noon,
единицы
let's
вот
say,
такой вот
you
краски
must
для волос,
have
потому что в период с часу до
2
2 к вам
pieces
придет клиент, который ее
of
купит. То есть, ну,
hair
глубокие такие аналитические там
dye is
модели, и
left
вполне
because
себе
you should
живые на
expect a
практике,
customer to
поэтому
come and pick it
иногда
up.
сам удивляешься,
So it was this rich
какие
level
результаты
of
удается
detail
получить, обрабатывать
that
данные,
this
которые, вот,
system
как я говорил вначале,
produced
да, вот они
based
просто
on
есть и
data
есть, и
processing.
кроме головной боли с хранением и их защиты, вроде как и не несут ценности, оказывается, несут.
So it may appear that it's only a pain in the ass, a pain in the neck, you know, to save the data, but in fact it's quite usable and useful.
Оказывается, там бизнес есть. Да, вопрос, пожалуйста.
Такая ситуация, когда в компании захотели там
Let's
пиццу поесть или еще какой-нибудь уникальный продукт посмотреть, ну, чтобы классно было бы. И тут бах, у всех реклама возникает, или там участие людей, что
would like to buy some beer
и вот
or
сейчас через полчаса
pizza,
все будет.
and then there is suddenly ads coming onto your smartphone. I'm always happy to see pizza advertising than some other rubbish from internet, which I'm not interested in. It's quite optimistic what you mentioned. These models start dumping advertisements on me after I've finished my pizza, not before I ordered it. So I've finished the pizza, and within 2 weeks later I'm getting those ads.
Еще момент. А на коммерческой основе Министерство по налогам и сборам не готово к сбыту этой информации?
The tax ministry, is it ready to sell this information on a commercial basis? I represent the National Unitary Enterprise, which is part of tax ministry, but not the ministry per se. So we as a legal entity could sell this data, so please come to us.
Так, еще вопросы? Мы сейчас тут вокруг данных. У меня еще, мы тут с регуляторики начинали еще.
Yeah, we start off with regulations, so I had a question for Mikhail.
Кто сейчас эксперт? Вы,
Who is
the
expert? The expert international. You're the only one, you know, working for the whole country, or is there a line of experts? Let me explain. When we work in committees, there is a request coming into a country to second an expert. If I vote for a certain country and I say I'm against, I say nay, there is a request why, and am I ready to provide another expert? When I encountered this, I immediately called Mr. Shavrov and convinced him to become our expert. I submitted his data to Committee 24 on spatial data, and he came to me and said, I'm overwhelmed with so much information. I'm ready to sit down and write another thesis. Don't be intimidated by it. You simply have to work. Now he gets invitation from all over the world, to Italy, other countries. So it's quite costly, of course, but if you have an interest to work in a subcommittee, you're welcome. It's a lot of fun. So go to the Joint Digital Committee and they will make arrangements. I had an experience working at the International Electro Committee, Electrotechnical Committee, and yeah, it was quite a lot of information that I received. So what about that portal you said was shut down, both in Belarus and Russia? I think it's supposed to be online. Well, Pavel, you know, I am in no position to say. We don't have this because there is no domain. As for Russia, we visited Russia on a business trip. They have a data delivery portal, but it operates only within Russia.
текущей ситуации.
So perhaps it's because current limitations and
Надеемся,
constraints.
у нас что-то заработает, потому что
Let's hope it will get back online, because when we get requests, the first thing they ask is what kind of data could be used or leveraged to solve a particular task. But for now, you have to, fantasize a bit. Perhaps some kind of bank could show up. Maybe there'll be some interoperability options put on the table to gain access to data that is formed within the government. And then we'll get data from other systems, because as owners understand that it's not only a burden but a potential source of profit, then it will slowly go from shadow into a real world.
Are there any further questions? We actually have a few minutes left. Hello. I come from the Information Editorial Center, and I have a question for Sergey. Last year, fortunately, I could participate in the international conference organized in Russia, in Annapolis, dedicated to AI and that big data processing. And one of the speakers mentioned that they're addressing the lack of qualified specialists through building up their internal competencies within the company. Do you do the same thing? Like, for instance, you have data processing specialists. Is it possible with your own efforts to turn them into data scientists?
Мы живем вообще в прекрасный век, когда информации гораздо больше, чем ее можно освоить. Столько прекрасных есть курсов, в том числе Сбер большое внимание уделяет тоже созданию таких курсов. У нас есть корпоративный университет, у него есть курсы как онлайн, так и офлайн, поэтому, в принципе, любые желающие могут это все освоить.
Learn new stuff also in Russia. There are many other companies who develop as to building. Yandex has shut, and Mail.ru also has something. Virtually all large companies provide to whoever wants to build up their knowledge and capacity and professional competencies. Sber is no exception. Our team we have even recorded a small course on data governance, not only AI. Thank you very much. But still, I would like to specify. You do in-house training mostly, or you're looking for already pre-trained, qualified staff? Both internally, we have people who undergo courses and then get external training, and outside Sber does regular conferences, big conferences or competitions with big prizes to those people who can show good results. They're also great candidates to end up in AI labs.
Все источники, потому что
we have all the sources of information that you can think of.
Людей, которые очень хорошими компетенциями,
with people with great competences and knowledge are
может им стать.
Short supply, and eventually anybody can become one.
Так, ну что, у кого еще вопросы есть?
Any further questions?
Может, у
maybe
как-то в президиуме участников есть вопросы?
Somebody in the presidium has questions.
Либо будем
each other, or shall we wrap it up already, because it's Friday night. Some people are expecting to have a long-deserved rest after TIBO. See even speakers come in, come back, leave, and return. Then, once again, can I say something? Yes. I have a small question out to the floor. Did you like my jungling act. Nobody mentioned it.
Похлопали в самом начале.
Спасибо, я понял.
Okay, thank you very much.
Вот Настад бы сказал, что вы жонглируете данными.
I would say that
вот,
you
ладно.
were jungling
На самом деле,
the
да,
data.
как я говорил в начале, тематика очень большая.
As I mentioned at the beginning, it's quite a broad theme to cover all the aspects within 3 hours would be unrealistic. I mean, high quality coverage
можно
is
попробовать.
unrealistic.
Но какие-то
But
аспекты
some aspects
затронули,
have been
где-то в
touched
теории,
upon,
где-то в практике.
sometimes
Понятно,
in
как
theory,
я
sometimes in
предполагал, что
practice.
практические доклады,
I
они всегда
understand that some
вызывают
practical reports
больше интерес,
inspire more
потому
interest
что
because
это вот уже опыт, на который
it's
можно
always
опереться, который можно
experience that we can
переиспользовать.
rely on, that we can
Опять
reuse.
же, в рамках подготовки,
Once again, within
когда
the framework of
просили
the
провести
preparation, when
секцию
I was
к
asked
секции
to
и отбора
prepare
спикеров, я там изучал
a
тему
panel for
отдельно, знаю, что в
speaker
государстве
selection,
ведется работа по
I
отдельным
looked at what is
документам.
being done in our
Предполагаю,
government
что сегодняшние
on
спикеры
certain
просто не
documents.
рискнули
I
докладывать, потому
thought
что
that
это еще
today's
работа,
speakers
наверное,
didn't risk
только
to
начата, либо в
report on that,
процессе, и
because
результаты
it's
еще
just the
немного,
work
может быть,
in
сыроваты.
process, and the
Может быть, на
results are
следующем
too rough.
форуме или на
Maybe
следующем
at the
мероприятии
next
по
forum or
тематике
next
мы
event
уже услышим,
on this we will
так
hear
что же,
more
как страна вообще видит вопрос регулирования, потому что
tangible things like
данных
how
много,
the country sees the
иногда
data
можно
regulation,
получить доступ
because
даже к
data
тому,
can
к чему
be
не хотел,
numerous,
а
and
вопрос
sometimes you
культуры,
can get access
этики
to
и
something that
последствий
you
их
didn't
использования.
expect. And the
Иногда
issue of
там
ethics
несколько раз
and
перекрестишь,
how
и
to
думаешь,
use
нет,
this.
не, лучше
Sometimes
мы не
you
будем использовать,
want to
как минимум
be
без них будем
on the
спасаться,
safe
чем
side,
потом
not to use it instead
погрязнуть
of
в
then
какой-нибудь
end up
юридической
in the
перипетии.
legal litigation bog.
Вот, поэтому спасибо
That's
нашим
why I would like to thank
спикерам
our
за
speakers
выступление,
for their
спасибо
presentations. I
участникам
would like
за
to
вопросы
thank
из
the
зала.
audience for their
По моему
questions.
убеждению, на данных можно и нужно
I
зарабатывать,
think that
только нужно
it's
делать это
okay to make money on data,
правильно.
just
Нам
that you
еще
have to do
много
it
чего
legally.
предстоит, наверное,
We
сделать в стране.
have many
Вообще, так
things
же,
to
как
do
и
in
вы,
our
очень много
country.
информационных систем
There are
создано, много чего
many information systems created
обрабатывается, и много
that
чего
process
представляет интерес
so many
для
things that
сопутствующих
would
задач.
have great interest for other auxiliary tasks, but we need to work with the norms and regulations.
Возможно, у нас появится
Perhaps
когда-то
we'll have
рынок больших данных. Это те
market
задачи,
for big
которые
data.
наши соседи
These are the
ставят себе в
assignments
качестве стратегических
developed by
задач.
our
Может появиться
neighboring
банк
countries for
государственных данных,
strategic
который также эффективно можно
assignments. Maybe there will be
быстро,
public
свободно,
data
оперативно
bank
получать
where
доступ и
we
переиспользовать
could
свои
get quick
системы.
access
Опять же,
to
обращал я
some
внимание,
required data.
что
Also noted
даже государственные
that even
программы,
the
они уже
public
не называются там
programs are no
цифровая
longer
чего-нибудь,
called
они уже называются
digital
экономика
something. They are
данных,
called
да, то есть те страны,
data
которые
economics.
выстроили этот
Those
ландшафт, они
countries who
уже во главу
will
угла ставят
succeed in building this landscape,
сами данные, и
they
денег,
recognize
с
the
их
importance
использованием
of
можно
data
зарабатывать. Поэтому
and the money that can be
впереди у
made
нас
on
еще
that.
большой
So
труд.
we have a lot of
Спасибо
work
еще раз за
ahead of us.
участие,
Once again,
успехов
thank you
всем,
for your
успехов
participation. I'd like to
убеждений
wish you
ваших
success.
руководителей либо госорганов,
Good
что
luck in
данные нужно
convincing
открывать,
your bosses
правильно
in
открывать, что
opening
на них,
data.
с них можно получать еще
It's
ценность,
a
а не
great
просто
asset that you can make
заплавлять
further
сервера.
money on.
Спасибо.
Thank you very much.
Представляем вам улучшенное покрытие от Life. Мы расширили 4G-сеть по всей стране, чтобы связь в каждом регионе становилась только лучше. Смотрите на всех смартфонах страны. Присоединяйтесь к нам и узнавайте подробности на live.com.by.